Ooh, excuse me. Goodness gracious. A lot of burps. A lot of burps this evening. Right. Definitely got that set amount of people that think the rules don't apply to them. Those are the best con. The best con. Yo, did anyone see the new Kung Fu Panda movie? I know it's a random topic.
Yep, already saw it.
Me personally, I loved the series, but I heard it didn't do too well in theaters. You have not? Okay, okay. Trying to hit somebody with that skadoosh. Yo, when he first did that shit, bro, I was dying. I was fucking dying. Yeah, I already saw it. It was okay. Oh man. Have you seen Kung Fu Hustlers? Nah, 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 nah. Is that on Netflix?
Kung Fu
Not like the
Hustle.
others, but it's okay. Okay. You know, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check it out. Hustle. Hustle. I
Hustle.
thought you
It's
put
Hustle.
Hustle. Kung Fu Hustle. Nah, I haven't seen Kung Fu Hustle. You know what? That's probably not on Netflix. Now that I think about it. Not like. Okay. Said that. Not like the others, but it's okay. It's free on Tubi. Yo. It's funny as fuck. Say less. Bro, yo. I've been seeing like here and there as far as like people be making fun of the Tubi movies because some stuff is just like so obvious of when like they're trying to do stuff a certain way that it just ends up being funny as shit. It's like scary movies mocking but kung fu. Huh. It's like scary movies mocking but kung fu. Hold up. Okay, I'll definitely take a look at that.
But it's one of the best classics ever, though.
Okay. The Edge.
Alrighty, very then. also kind of bad, but slow down to polyframes.
But it's one of the best classics though. Anthony, you talking about what IH just said as far as Kung Fu Hustle? Said it was on Tubi too. Right. Alright, I'll straighten that out later. Okay. So that's what we got so far. It's gonna be a dope one. Right. I think I might leave some stuff without a black line and some stuff with the outline. A little bit of balance. Alright. Yo, I appreciate everybody who came to hang out today and checked out the art. From the bottom of my heart. Really love that, man. Yes, Kung Fu Hustle. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that out, man. Definitely going to have to check that out. Next time, I'll definitely be doing. I'll do a longer art stream, and then I'm gonna include games in probably too. If not, just like a longer art stream. But thank you guys once again. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. I'm gonna try to find somebody to raid out. If anybody has anybody, then I will definitely get through to them. As I'm doing this, do you guys, one last question, do you guys have a favorite movie?
Favorite movie?
Let's see.
I don't have a list.
One of a few favorites, I would have to. Getting my tabs mixed up. One of a few favorites I would have would be Gladiator. Okay, Gladiator. I don't put a list. Anthony, I feel that. I haven't seen that. That sounds familiar though. No, it would have to be Gladiator. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking you meant that, and then I was actually reading the words, and I kept on going back and forth between two. I was like, it's all Gucci. It's all Gucci. Okay, let me see real quick. I'm gonna see who's on, and go ahead and raid out to them. Okay, guys, we're gonna go ahead and raid one of my friends, the Rage Queen. She's actually playing Warzone right now. I will put her information in just a second.
What is this?
You can't go wrong with movies though, man. Always a good time. Okay. On one of Jay-Z's tracks, he used the sound from It. Are you not entertained? Oh, what? Wait, IH, you talking about? Oh, you're talking about one of the songs in the movie from the soundtrack. That is her information, guys. We are going to go ahead and raid out.
Right here, Bob. I broke him. Oh my god.
Jay-Z, what more can I say? You know, you bring up a point, bro. I mean, it's Jay-Z. It's Jay-Z. And there
Gas
he
mask.
references that line, which is from
Oh, I
Gladiator.
need
Okay,
that.
I'm gonna check out that movie too.
Gas is inbound, marking a new safe zone.
All right, you guys. If you can go ahead and show Del Rage Queen
UBR.
some
Listen,
love
we
and
need
chat.
to
She's playing
change.
Warzone. Go crazy.
Honestly, Rapsy,
Oh, I think she's playing. She's not playing ranked. I don't believe. I think she's playing pubs. Go show her some love.
Why?
I will see you guys next time. Everybody have a great night, man. Deuces. Goodbye.
Yo, Color with the raid on kick. I appreciate you, suspect. Can I get a shout out for Color, please? How was your stream, Color? I appreciate you. Welcome in, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. Eat, Rabzi. No. If you're tired, sleep it off. Actually, sleep it off. What's up, Color? How you doing? I don't know if Suspect is still here. Suspect!
Gas is moving.
There's the buy.
Maybe.
Nice. Let me just
Not
give
bad, not bad.
Color a raid. How are you, Color? Sorry, it's on kick,
to the safe
Rabzi. I'm gonna give you a shout out. Guys, please follow Color if you haven't already.
I'm gonna do something stupid.
I don't play Warzone.
Yeah, I don't think he's here.
I'm going up to this water tower.
How are you, Color?
I just took the heli.
That's good. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. I appreciate the raid once again. Sorry, let's lock in.
Ooh, I broke
Gulag's
one.
closing. Where are they?
Over here. I'm gonna cross.
Yeah, let's go. I don't know why we're here. Oh, you flew off. How did you fly off?
Yeah. There's a zip right here.
I'm taking the ladder.
I'm just camping right here behind this wall.
At least you admit that you're a camper.
Yeah.
Another self? What the fuck?
Girl, tell me about it. I found about 4 selves. I've got one with me extra and I've got a plate box.
Same. I have a plate box and an ammo box.
But Gulag's closing now, so there's no point.
This is what
Games
it
aren't
is.
too bad. We've had about
Wait.
7 dubs, I would say.
Channel 2. I
Oh, they're looking at me to the right.
should I
Okay, the
stream
sniping, the sniping, the
live?
sniping.
Requesting recon flyover.
YouTube, cake,
Oh my god, they're right there.
Twitch.
I've got a mortar.
Nah. I've only streamed games when it comes to D Live and True.
You down,
Mortar,
what?
mortar it, mortar it, yeah.
Requesting fire mission.
Well
Target
done.
marked.
You got gas inbound. Safe zone
For
relocated.
now,
You're
nah.
gonna die.
No, he's not. Time to get
Oh.
Loadout drop inbound.
Not my cup of tea of game. Play. See who else doing some creative stuff. Let's see, let's see. That guy. Then there's me. Why I'm not seeing me yet. Wonder why. I'm not mistaken. I'm in the wrong thing. Random auto. Just, and not. Oh. Hey, that seem about right. Guys,
is because the people that he associates with his own attempts to make an AMP or an RDC, yeah, I'm talking about you, SSB, they are actively ruining the platform as we speak. Because not only are they lazy streamers, but they're going on streams saying the most outrageous things to get banned, and then they're turning around begging their friend Aiden Ross to get them unbanned.
Right, so like, come on.
What is going on here?
Come on. And I'm not even gonna say nothing because XQC is just gonna somehow turn around me and say I'm homophobic. Yes, homophobic. I hate homes. I don't give a fuck.
Every shot, nigga. Fuck the nigga. What, nigga?
Wait, can I say that in front of you?
I mean, bro, that's what you want to say.
Yeah. He's not. Yo, that's not him. But I'm every shot, y'all.
Oh yeah, I don't know what Cheezer and Convy are doing, but that's totally tough. Them going directly at the LGBTQ community. And we've already heard in the past Aiden Ross talk about why they have honestly put a bad taste into Kick's mouth, in which they can't get other streamers on the platform and get them the big paydays. He's talked about in the limos with Steve Will Do It, I believe, before. It's absolutely crazy.
People that I would say inflate to get better deals on Kick, they ruined it for my boys. Because I was trying to get my boys Cheezer and Convy, and you're an example, deals, and because there's a streamer that was viewbotting heavy,
who's walking around Universal Studios, yes.
and he knew that I wanted to get them a deal, and I couldn't get them a deal.
That's fucked
because he's botting too much.
Hell, it's even gotten so bad that Mr. Two Genders himself has had to come out and publicly disown those comments with XQC and other streamers to say like, yo, I don't associate with that. I don't think the platform stands for that. And that's crazy because those are his friends.
Be fucking quiet, bitch. You let a bitch crash your car, bitch. I think it's fine.
I ain't finna let this tranny talk to me like this. Come on, start the game, bro. Oh, God,
Yo. Why?
You heard me. He took it there.
Get the fuck over it. Get the fuck
No.
over it.
Think of it like this. Let's just say everyone in my community was black, and someone were to say something to you guys, slur. No shit, I'm gonna have you guys back. That's why I fuck with what XQC did. He defended his community. You guys could say all you want. I don't care to cater to you toxic 12-year-old retards. My friends were 100% in the wrong, and they know they're in the wrong, and they apologize to XQC privately.
This might be me beating a dead horse. All publicity is supposed to be good publicity, but I've always thought that that was a straight up lie. Kick cannot be sustainable if all this BS continues to come out like this. And then we take into consideration some of the bigger creators on the platform totally taking a step back or being exposed for who they truly are. It only puts the platform in a worse light. Neon's numbers look terrible, especially since he got caught viewbotting. He used to be number 3 23 on the platform, but now he's fallen all the way to 22. He's been arrested lately. He's dating these OF models, and now he's even streaming less, and it's getting crazy. And then another big acquisition for the platform, Bruce Dropomoff, has decided that he's leaving to go back to Twitch, which is like the most revealing thing ever. This is like going back to your parents' house after you said, I can do better by myself.
I'm going back to Twitch full time. I'm not trolling. We are taking over Twitch again, yes. Y'all already knew what time it was, bro.
And hell, I don't blame Bruce Dropomoff. When you have a leader like Aiden Ross going around aimlessly doing things, being a part-time streamer, always having to advocate for the things that goes on this stupid platform, it sounds like there's a ship with no leader. There's no clear direction. And then when you couple that with all the crazy things that have been going on as of late, people doing fake AI Aiden Ross videos that are having kids destroy their own property, and you have these crazy kids doing stunt driving while they're drinking on the platform, it just screams like a cesspool of disgusting, harmful behavior that nobody wants to be attached to, because this hurts their brand, this hurts their image, and it hurts the long game as to who they are and what they can be. Look, I think virality is necessary in content creation. Doing these shock value things will bring people back to your content in droves. It'll have people discover you, especially if you're very, very shareable, because people are going to be interested in who is that kid? Why should I be listening to him? Because I just saw something insanely hilarious and I want to go back to it. But the problem with Kick, and the problem that I've been saying with this type of content or this type of platform or these type of audience building things, is that it's a topping culture. I have to top the last thing I did each and every time. And now it seems like we're on the borderlines of people being downright life-threatening with not only their lives, but the lives of other people. And if you have something like that, honestly, I think you should be next up on the list of platforms to be banned, just like TikTok was. Look, you'd rather be too early than too late, and Aiden Ross, take the same path as Bruce Dropomoff. Sell whatever stake you have left for whatever it is worth, and try to find a different platform to stream on. I know Kai Cenat recently has been pleading to Twitch to let you back on there, and I don't think that that's a coincidence.
Oh my god, Aiden, you're so slow, because I tell you don't say certain shit and you still go out and say it. Aiden, since the year started, I've been trying to get Aiden unbanned. Each time that goes by, this nigga digs himself in a bigger fucking hole. When I say, Aiden, listen, don't say nothing about, like, we gonna try to work on this, set up some meetings and see what can happen. The nigga hops on stream next day, Kai, get me a man, please!
The reason why I think Kai Cenat has been begging Twitch to allow you to go back onto the platform is because y'all are having conversations behind closed doors that says, I see the writing on the wall, what's going on at Kick, and then I want to get out of here, but I can't get out of here because I don't have a home, and I definitely can't go to YouTube because I'll be clapped within 2 seconds. So Kai, Mr. The Face of Twitch, can you please, please, please get these people to allow me back on the platform so that I can have a new home and I can land on my feet once I leave this shithole of a platform. I wish them the best of luck over there at Kick, but you know, stupid people gonna do stupid things, and when you do stupid things, play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Let me know what's going on. Tell me what you think about Kick, man.
Oh, so far, me, I have no problem with it. Watch people like that, shit like that. So I could say,
Oh good, you're here. Listen, I can't find my phone. Could you call it? You'll need my phone number. Let me just remind myself of what it is. Wait a second. This is so embarrassing. Intel is firmly blaming motherboard manufacturers for the ongoing stability issues with high-end 13th and 14th gen CPUs. I'm sure they're being totally reasonable, and there's no way that Intel also shares fault for the state of the processors that Intel itself designed. This is after several companies such as MSI and Asus featured default settings on higher-end boards, allowing Intel processors to draw practically unlimited power and current. In a statement obtained by Igor's lab, Intel is asking its board partners to please not do that, and recommending board partners warn users if any unlocked or overclocking features are in use. But Team Blue seems to be ignoring their own role in this. Hardware Unboxed has pointed out that Intel has been giving board partners a broad range of recommended settings rather than clearly defining power specifications for years, even claiming Intel considers boards without power limits to be in spec. Intel's own marketing material shows tests done on the exact motherboards they're now complaining about. It seems like Intel was so concerned about number go up, they never considered CPU go boom.
Except metaphorically.
MSI announced they will no longer be releasing AMD Radeon GPUs. This comes just days after listings for MSI's Radeon cards mysteriously disappeared from stores across the globe. It's also worth noting that MSI never released a 7700 XT or 7800 XT after they were announced by AMD. In a statement to German outlet Hardware Lux, MSI said they are focusing on RTX cards instead of Radeon cards, likely because NVIDIA GPUs sell significantly better, and MSI likes money.
How dare they?
It's not a charity. MSI claims they are still collaborating with AMD on other hardware, most notably on motherboards. And they didn't say they'd never make another AMD GPU, but this news feels weird. It calls MSI's relationship with AMD into question, and it makes it feel especially weird that the MSI Claw was the first gaming handheld to use an Intel Core Ultra processor with ARC graphics instead of an AMD APU, like all of its competitors. But I'm not here to gossip. I need at least one box of red wine and some popcorn first.
I'll get you some, James.
I wasn't asking, but Meta has been doing basically everything wrong. Thousands of not safe for work AI girlfriend ads are showing up on Facebook and Instagram despite Meta's own ad policies. An investigation by Wired found that at least 29,000 such ads have been published on Meta platforms, with most of them using sexually aggressive messaging, and that's the worst kind of aggressive. I don't want Facebook telling me all about the lonely AIs in my area. I just want to wish my problematic uncle a happy birthday, damn it! Unfortunately, the story only gets worse, as Apple has had to pull 3 generative AI apps used for deepfake pornography after an investigation by 404 Media. The apps in question advertise themselves on Instagram using taglines like, "Undress any girl for free." Something that makes me feel like taking 7 consecutive showers and scrubbing myself with bleach. Fortunately, these ads may have been completely ineffective since Meta's automated advertising tools are completely broken. The company's Advantage Plus shopping campaigns service markets itself as an AI-powered alternative to manual ad campaigns, promising less setup time and greater efficiency. It's the year of efficiency after all. According to several businesses, the only thing efficient about the AI is how quickly it blows through advertising budgets. Businesses using the service report that it burned through their budget in a couple of hours, and the ads didn't even earn any revenue. Come on, Meta, advertising is one of the 2 things you're supposed to be good at. Now your only achievement is making teenagers depressed. Advertising isn't that hard. For example, here's our sponsor.
Charge! They're the company that charges your devices, but they yearn for more. Meet the Charge Disk, their new M.2 NVMe SSD enclosure. Weighing in at just 24 grams, it still manages transfer speeds of up to 10 gigabits per second and packs a cooling fan that'll drop your SSD temps by 20 degrees Celsius. Thanks to its USB-C jack, connectivity is simple. Assembly? Easy peasy, tool-freezy. It's tool-free. Plus, it's got built-in hardware write protection to help safeguard your data. Use it for your Steam Deck, ROG Ally, or even your iPhone 15. Check it out at the link below.
Are you a busy person on the go who doesn't have time to listen to tech news? Well, now you can, thanks to QuickBits. Call now. U.S. Homeland Security has invited a range of notable figures from the world of AI, including Sam Altman, Jensen Huang, Satya Nadella, and Sundar Pichai, to its new Artificial Intelligence Safety and Security Board. Around 8 of the board's 23 members are from companies in the tech industry, raising concerns about regulatory capture and excessive industry influence.
The rest are ChatGPT.
But you know what they say, keep your friends close, and Sam Altman closer. That little shit's up to something, I just know it. AMD planned to launch an RX 8000 series graphics card that would have absolutely effed up NVIDIA's crap, but they canceled it, according to Kepler L2, a well-known leaker of such things. On the AnandTech forums, Kepler posted a snippet of the GPU source code, which lists 9 shader engines, 3 more than AMD's current flagship GPU, the RX 7900 XTX, and the canceled card would have had more than twice the compute units, according to another user in the thread. Those specs would have allowed this card to smash NVIDIA's RTX 4090 harder than an idiot smashing the like button on a Logan Paul video. So why didn't AMD launch it? Probably because making a working product is harder than writing a list of specs, but that's just a theory.
A game theory! I've waited years.
He's retired. iPadOS has been officially designated as a gatekeeper platform by the European Commission, and thus will not be subjected to the same rules as non-pad OS under the EU's Digital Markets Act. That means that Apple now has 6 months to allow iPad users in the EU to access third-party app stores through their big touchscreen things, in addition to their little touchscreen things. Sounds like a lot of work to set up. I hope they make it in time.
Complicated.
In more Apple news, the company is pushing the Vision Pro 2 to late 2026, according to Mark Gurman. This is after analyst Ming-Chi Kuo also reported that Apple cut its 2024 Vision Pro shipments in half before the headset has even debuted outside the US. Surprisingly, the $3,500 headset must not have sold super well. And work on a cheaper version is not going great, as Apple is flummoxed. This is real, it's quotation marks. They're actually flummoxed by how to bring the cost down. That's what happens when you spend years over-engineering and overpricing literally everything you release.
I don't say this often, but I'm genuinely flummoxed.
Wow. And the Abu Dhabi Autonomous Racing League held its first 2 races over the weekend. One race featured only self-driving race cars, while the other pitted self-driving race cars against human driving drivers. Now, that might sound like an exciting competition of man versus machine, but the AI-driven cars were slow, easily confused by the smoke from other cars, and repeatedly spun out and crashed despite not going very fast.
It's a ghost!
Honestly, it was a little bit like if you replaced Dale Earnhardt with a bunch of nervous octogenarians trying to desperately hold on to their driver's licenses. But you've got to hold on another 2 days until you can come back on Wednesday for more tech news. The math works out. It won't come any faster than that, even if you pout.
Interesting.
Hey guys, it's Ryan with AIinsidertips.com, and in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how you can create these eye-catching YouTube thumbnails with the help of AI. Now, if you go to my YouTube channel at AI Insider Tips, first I would suggest subscribing before doing anything else, of course. But if you scroll down, you'll see my thumbnails here. That's like Go Viral, Free AI Tools, Grok versus ChatGPT, Human versus AI, Best Custom GPTs, and on. All of these are generated with the help of AI, and more specifically, DALL-E 3 inside ChatGPT. So you'll see here this Human versus AI thumbnail. Here it is right here inside my ChatGPT Plus account. Now I'm going to show you how I created this and giving you the exact prompt that I did to do so. So you'll see the prompt right here. This is a long prompt, so I'm not going to read it word for word, but I will copy and paste this and put this in the video description so you guys can use this for your own thumbnails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to start a new chat. So in this video, I'm actually going to generate the thumbnail that I'm going to be using when I publish this video. So I'm on ChatGPT Plus, which does have DALL-E 3 built into it. It is $20 a month, as you guys probably know by now. But if you don't have ChatGPT Plus, what you can do is use Microsoft Copilot. So if I go to copilot.microsoft.com, you must be signed into a free Microsoft account to generate images. But if you click Designer, you can use DALL-E 3 completely for free. Now, it's not as good as what you would get inside ChatGPT Plus, and I'll prove it here in a second. But this is a free option to use DALL-E, and many people don't even know about this. So what I'm going to do now is open up a new chat inside ChatGPT 4, as it does come with DALL-E again, so that's why I have to use GPT-4 here. And I'm going to share with you my prompt that I used to generate these YouTube thumbnails, and it looks like the following. And I will leave this in the video description below so you guys can easily copy and paste this and replace with your relevant topic or whatever your videos focus on. So obviously it will change depending on the content of your videos. But here is the prompt. Create an engaging YouTube thumbnail for my video titled How to Create YouTube Thumbnails with AI. The image must include the following: prominent centered white text, and here's where you would add your text. Background resembles artificial intelligence in YouTube. The color scheme should be dominated by red tones resembling YouTube's brand. 16:9 aspect ratio and 1200 by 628 pixels, as those are best practices for a YouTube thumbnail. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this into Microsoft Copilot just to get another look at a thumbnail. And I'm going to come back here, I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to come back after these thumbnails are created. All right, so here is what DALL-E 3 came up with based on the following prompt that I shared with you earlier. And right away, what I don't like, and this is pretty common among DALL-E 3, this is one of its biggest flaws right now in my opinion, is it did not spell thumbnails correctly. AI looks good and the background looks good in my opinion, but it misspelled thumbnails. So then what I did to help speed up this video and not have you guys sit through all these edits is I said incorrect, please spell it correctly. And after a few iterations, it still didn't spell it correctly. So then what I said was just don't add any text at all. And here is what it generated. And I kind of like that. So if you find a thumbnail that you like, you can simply just click here. You can edit it more if you want using the select button, or I would just download it. So I'm just going to download it. I'm going to save it on my desktop. If I come back to Copilot, it did the same thing. So here's what Copilot came up with. Here's the first image. If I click this, so it looks like it's misspelled thumbnails again. This one's not terrible. It misspelled thumbnails. I actually don't mind the design of some of these, but it just misspelled a lot of things. So asked it to misspell it, still misspelled it. But here's some really cool options here, guys. So I just said remove all text, and this is what it came up with no text. So some of these images are pretty cool. I like that one. So if I wanted to use that in a thumbnail, I could definitely do so. And with Copilot, if you click this little 3 dots icon here, you can click download, and then this will download from Microsoft Copilot. So it should come up in my downloads folder here in a second. And so I'm going to save both this one and the other one, and then I'm going to create a thumbnail using Photoshop. So I'm going to save this to my desktop here. And if you guys like some of the other ones, let me know in the comments. I'm just trying to do something quick here. So I saved this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch Adobe Photoshop. So here's Photoshop right here, and I've already have a pre-saved template that is optimized for YouTube thumbnails. I believe it's 1200 by 720. It says right here 1280 by 720. So I would suggest doing that first, is creating dimensions that are best optimized for YouTube thumbnails. You can just come back to it. I also have a black background, and guys, I'm not a graphic designer by any means. I've just kind of learned this through trial and error. So now what I'm going to do is to create this thumbnail. So I'm going to use one of the images, I believe it was from Microsoft Copilot. If I come over here, I'm going to drag that image here. Guys, I am all over the place with all these different things. Let's pull up this image here. So here's the image I'm going to use for my thumbnail. Now, what I noticed right away is it's not optimized for those dimensions, but I can quickly fix that using, I believe, the drop tool it's called. I'll show you here what I mean. So I'm going to hit enter so it comes into the frame here. And then I'm going to use what's called, I believe, this dropper tool, eyedropper tool. And I'm going to take one of the colors from the background. So I'm going to take this dark red maroonish color here. So it's in my eyedropper. I'm going to click the paintbrush, and then I'm going to put, let's do 75 for the size and pixels. And then I'm going to paint the background here so it's not black. All right, so now that I've painted the background, I'm going to add a headshot of myself. So I'm just going to use a simple one in this example of me pointing. First, I want to make sure that it's the top layer here on the right. I want to click the select option here, and I'm actually going to re-upload that so I can resize it. Come back. I usually put this on the bottom right corner. Come back here, make it a little bigger. Maybe move myself over here a little bit. Usually it takes some time for me to play around with this, guys, just to see what looks better. But let's just go ahead and do that for now. So that's what I would do. And then maybe I would add some text in here through Canva. I'm not going to do that in this example. If you want to add like a ChatGPT logo somewhere, you can do that as well. Maybe inside the image here somewhere. You could probably even put it on his head. Under the image doesn't look great. I'd maybe put this on his head here. I'm not very creative. I'm just doing something as I think of it here on the fly. But you guys can obviously do whatever you want. So if I put the ChatGPT logo on his head, that is what you can do. And you can move it around here to maybe center it a bit. Let's see. Right there looks good. So that's kind of the thumbnail I think I'm going to roll with for this video. I might make some more iterations in the future, but we'll see. But that's it, guys. That is how you use ChatGPT, and more specifically, DALL-E 3 inside ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot to generate these YouTube thumbnails using AI. Again, this is Ryan with AI Insider Tips. Appreciate you all watching this video. Sorry for the convoluted process. This is just the way my brain works. I think I have ADHD, to be completely honest. So appreciate you guys who have stuck around this far. Like this video if you found value. Dislike it if you didn't. Be sure to subscribe again if you haven't already. And guys, I hope you all have a great day.
Woohoo. Gotta create more on thumbnail. Much better to
Ryan Gosling, an accomplished dramatic actor with impeccable comedic timing, a man so cool, he won't even eat his cereal. When it comes to what it is to be a likable, cool actor, Ryan Gosling has the monopoly. Speaking of which, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video. This video is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go is everything you loved about Monopoly, minus the board flipping. But now it's been optimized for that on-the-go experience. You still roll the dice, go around the board as you build your empire, play with your friends or other players across the internet, and that short, sweet playtime optimization, that is perfect. Because in life, you got downtime, but downtime should not be wasted time. My fellow gamers out there know there's always time to game. Sometimes you want a nice
Thank you for the follow.
And although you can't rage flip the board in the name of sabotage, sabotage itself has been built into the gameplay. You can demolish other players' landmarks, commit bank heists. It's Monopoly reimagined. And the fact is, with this busy world getting busier, this is a fun, quick, engaging way to game with your friends. Even when the time to do so is becoming a rarer commodity of life. And right now the game's having an awesome event called Anniversary Treasures Dig. You get to excavate cool tokens, shields, other items. So if you'd like to unleash your inner tycoon, click the link below or scan the QR code to download Monopoly Go. And now we have ourselves a hopefully fun action comedy. Or romantic comedy. Or both. Well, wait, if it's action comedy and romantic comedy, wouldn't that make it action, romance, and comedy?
Save
Which means it's all three, not both.
Always make sure
So
you
The Fall Guys,
save.
directed by David Leitch, stars Ryan Gosling and Emily
See,
Blunt.
case
Emily
of a
Blunt's character in the
crash.
movie is directing an action film. Her and Ryan
Yourself
Gosling
up.
used to date, but then he was injured and he kind of just ghosted. Point is, she's directing a movie now. He's the stuntman in the movie, but her star, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's gone missing. So Ryan Gosling's picked by the producer to go find him. That's right, the stuntman's essentially being a private investigator to go find the missing star. This feels like a throwback to something that might have come out in the 80s. Well, it is. This is a big screen adaptation of a series from the 80s starring Lee Majors of the same name. Which when I was talking about this movie in my anticipated movies of the year, I saw the comments. People like, obviously he doesn't know this is based on a TV series. Look, when I'm firebombing a list of 10 movies, I can't go into all the history of all the movies for the sake of time management. Usually. In the case of Fall Guy, you're absolutely correct. I had no idea. Dad was more of a Star Trek guy when I was a kid, what can I say? However, I did really love Knight Rider and the A-Team. Point is, The Fall Guy is an 80s, we'll even say 80s to 90s action film love letter to the unsung heroes of action cinema. The folks who do the stunts, make the action stars look good and get none of the credit. And that's woven into the plot. I mean, he's on this quest because people don't know who the stuntman is. They'll never recognize you. You gotta go do this for the studio. It being an action romantic comedy, the chemistry between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, I thought they were great. They have great on-screen chemistry in the sense that, yeah, I mean, you can tell they're still in love with each other. Hopefully they will learn that by the end of this film. It's so absolutely apparent on screen, it doesn't even feel like a spoiler to say, yeah, they obviously have a spark there. I bought them not just as romantic infatuations, but genuinely bought them as friends. They had a camaraderie to them. Whatever romance we're going for on screen, it feels like one that might actually last. Not common in Hollywood, don't even buy it in fictional Hollywood. But I want this one to work. That's the point. This movie makes it easy for the audience to root for them. That's important. While Ryan Gosling is on screen getting put through the ringer, you don't want the audience just to be thinking, why is he fighting for this? If it works out, I'll give him 6 months. No, let the audience think that about people they know in their actual lives. This is idealistic escapist cinema. Let us believe. Anyhow, did a good job at that. And this love letter to the unsung stunt performers should have good action sequences, right? Yeah, I thought the action was a lot of fun. Fun action, great stunts. That which they are celebrating is shown on screen. Show, don't tell. And because this movie is wrapped up in stunt culture, I guess I'll say. Is that the correct term? I don't know. It gives you enough of a glimpse behind the set, behind the curtain of the fictional movie they're making, into the stunt world, in which when you see a stunt going down, you appreciate, you're like, hey,
I feel like I know a little more of what I'm looking at. Couldn't write a thesis or anything, but you know, there's a little bit more appreciation as you're watching it. And the movie, in its own way, is telling a cautionary tale of technology. Funny, the movie's comedy is, I don't want to say it's conflicting at times, but at a point it's like, it's like opposite breaking the fourth wall. When someone's zonked out of their minds, couldn't think of a better term, so I'm using zonked. Let me consult the supercomputer in my pocket. Yep, stupefied by drugs or alcohol. Also a term old people say, good job, Jeremy. Right. Anyhow, when showing a character in that state, you can do one of two things. Show that they are and have the audience see them how the room sees them, like Nicolas Cage in Face Off. Or you can have the audience in their POV and the audience gets to see all the wild shit that they're seeing, unicorns included. And I was wondering why that stood out as conflicting in the theme of the movie. I think it's because stunt work is something that's objectively in the real world. It's physical work, being a body going through a piece of glass or a wall, a car tumbling. It's tangible physical work in the real world. And then when you're seeing a trip in someone's POV, it's kind of the opposite of that. I don't know what it means. I'm not saying you're gonna have this relationship with the scene. I'm just saying I did. I say this part for the 3 other people watching this video that might go, hey, he saw it how I saw it. I will say, common complaint moment. But around the 90-minute mark, I was like, this movie's wrapping up. I'm feeling good about this. 90 minutes in and out. Fun, action, romance, comedy. I read somewhere on the Googles it was somewhere around 2 hours and 5 minutes. I guess I read that wrong. Oh no, it's still going. The end of what felt like the final act just left. Granted, the second last act of the movie really is what the movie's celebrating. Led to some fun moments, some fun action spectacle. Totally get it. Doesn't change the fact that I felt the last half hour of this movie a lot more than I felt the first 90 minutes. But in the end, still had a great time. The Fall Guy is kind of a rarity in the entertainment world. There are a lot of movies, television shows, whatever. There's a lot of entertainment that throws nostalgic time, but it still feels like a modern thing throwing back. Maybe it feels a little out of place, a little on the nose. The Fall Guy truly is a film that if it came out somewhere between Lethal Weapon and Rush Hour, it'd be right at home. Regardless of the fact that it's in modern times, they have smartphones, but you know what I mean. It was a fun, ridiculous time that you could watch in theaters, then buy on VHS. There's your throwback right there. Should release it on VHS. Physical media is dying, but my fellow tape heads, we keep it alive. Or so The Fall Guy, have you seen it? What did you think about it? It comes out this weekend, so maybe not yet. After you see it, you can let me know. In the meantime, what's your favorite action movie? It's a bit vague, right? There's a lot to choose from. You can do top 3. Time may come, they charge us by the letter in the comment section, but that is not today, so you have fun with a list if you want. Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.
Interesting.
It's kind of overwhelming. What's the right way to start? How do you really learn art? What if you get it wrong? Stop. Don't worry. It's not actually that scary. Learning art can get pretty complicated, but I'll try to simplify it and break it down so that hopefully you'll have a better idea of how to get started. Okay, so there's one question that I get asked all the time. Am I too old to start drawing? Maybe you've already seen people half your age that are already accomplished artists, and you know that learning art is something that's gonna take a while. The answer is, of course not. Plenty of artists start later on in life. Vincent van Gogh started painting at 27, which isn't even late, by the way. The best time to start learning anything was 10 years ago. But the second best time is now. Imagine yourself 10 years later, wishing you had started right now. So now that you've decided to start, how can you actually start learning how to draw? A quick note about tools before we begin. You don't need fancy tools to start drawing. Pencil and paper are more than enough. If you happen to have a graphics tablet, that also works. A lot of the things you'll learn will be transferable, so don't sweat the details too much. The first thing you can try is drawing from reference. Just find a picture of something you like, or find something in real life. While you're doing that, pay attention to the proportions and try to copy accurately. For example, how large are certain shapes compared to each other? How close are they? What are the angles of the lines that you see? If you're interested in drawing stylized art, it might be easier to try copying somebody else's art. But just remember to give credit if you do. Real life has so many details that can be kind of hard to remember. The benefit of copying stylized art is that it simplifies it all down so it's a bit more manageable. Okay, so we're just copying for now, and it feels like this should be easy, right? After all, you have the reference image right in front of you, but are you finding it more difficult than expected? Why is that? There's one reason you might be struggling with this, and that is because your observation skills haven't been developed yet. This, of course, makes perfect sense because you're just starting out. So what does this actually mean? It means that you have to learn to draw what you see, not what you think you see. Those are two very different things. For example, when a non-artist is told to draw a face, they usually do something like this. The eyes are around here, right? But if you look at any photograph of a person, you'll notice that the eyes are actually about the midway point down the head. That's what I mean by drawing what you see instead of what you think. You need to put information into your brain to learn anything, and having good observation skills means that that information is quality and accurate. But there could be another reason that your drawings aren't coming out like you want them to. Perhaps your lines are simply not going where you want them to. Are they wobbly? Or if you're a digital artist, maybe you're pressing the undo button over and over again trying to get the right line. If this is your problem, maybe consider doing some line control practice. Drawing lines as an artist isn't exactly the same thing as writing. It involves a lot more shoulder and elbow movement to get those long, smooth lines. As you keep drawing, your line control will gradually improve, but you can also do deliberate practice, like this. Try drawing straight lines, curved lines, circles, anything you'd like to practice. Then try tracing over those lines you just drew to practice your accuracy. Doing this exercise 1 to 2 times will already improve your control. You can do it as many times as you like. Personally, I still do this now and again. So let's say you're drawing from reference and you're thinking copying stuff is fine and good, but how can I actually draw those scenes, those characters that I see in my head? What if you want to start drawing from imagination? And I'm here to tell you that you can start doing it by just doing it. Seriously. I know this is probably not what you want to hear, because your first drawing from imagination, they're probably not going to look so good. That's fine. This is a skill that you're learning. You don't have to show anyone if you don't want to. More importantly, if you're not satisfied, you can use this as a learning opportunity. Compare it with a similar reference, for example, and see what they did differently. For instance, here's a picture of a cat I drew from imagination. I guess it's not so bad, but when I compare it to a reference photo, you can see that the eyes are rounder and the nose bridge is a little bit narrower. Even one single observation is enough. Just remember to keep it in mind for your next drawing. Here's something you can try if you want to improve. Try drawing something from imagination. Then compare it to a reference to see what you can improve on, and draw it again from reference. Then draw it again from imagination and just keep alternating between the two. Try drawing it from lots of different angles and you'll start to intuitively understand the 3D form of what you're drawing. But wait, hang on. That sounds good and all, but just do it? Surely there has to be more to it than that, right? That sounds too simple. If you're starting with a blank canvas, how do you even get started? Which part are you supposed to draw first? If this is something you're struggling with, it's a good time to check out some art tutorials for whatever it is you want to draw. For example, a tutorial for an anime head will look something like this. There are artists that don't like tutorials like these because sometimes these tutorials aren't grounded in good fundamentals. At least, that's what I used to think as well. But wait, art fundamentals? What are those? More on that later. When I was watching my partner draw for the first time, there was something that I realized. He was pretty confused about which part of the picture to draw first. You could see by his process how chaotic it was. Like he'll draw the eyebrow here and then later on draw a section of the face. It just doesn't really make very much sense. A good basic tutorial can help bring some structure to the process. It might not be useful forever, but it serves as a pretty good starting point. It's also good for practicing and understanding the importance of guidelines. If you ever find yourself confused about where to begin a drawing, that's where these tutorials might help. So let's say you've been diligently practicing, but then you look at your work and you think, wow, I'm really not very good at this, am I? Maybe I'm not cut out for it, or maybe I'm not talented enough. My drawings look a little bit like the scribblings of a child. Okay, don't panic. It's actually harder to start drawing as an adult for one main reason. Here's a graph to demonstrate what I mean. Assuming you're a learning artist, as time goes on, you get better at art. Your skill increases. That makes sense. But it's not the only important thing here. You also have to consider your taste or ability to judge good art. It also improves as you draw. But that's not the only thing that can improve your taste. It also gets better as you consume media. Movies, art, anything. Which means that if you're starting as an adult, your ability to see art is already all the way up here. And if you just started drawing, your ability to draw is down here. This means that it'll take time for your art ability to catch up to your good taste. You'll be stuck making art that you don't like for a while. Now, children don't have this problem because their taste isn't as developed as an adult's. They draw not so well, and they can't tell, so they just keep going. And it can be tough for an adult because it'll take time, maybe even a lot of time, before they can make art that they're actually happy with. This is just gonna take a while, so you're gonna have to be patient. Instead of focusing on the final results, try focusing on what you're learning and the meditative process of the drawing itself. And that's it. That's all you actually need to learn how to draw. Just keep repeating this process as necessary. This is the process I use to learn to draw like this. This is some of my old art. And you might be thinking, wait, doesn't that seem a little too easy? There has to be more than that. How do you even know you're practicing the right thing? So let me introduce you to art fundamentals. Because they're actually fundamentals and concepts you can study and learn to get better at art. But remember, just having fun and drawing what you want can take you pretty far. Mileage is important. But if you do want to take your art to that next level, I'll give you a brief rundown of some fundamentals that you could look into. 1. Perspective and construction. Learn to draw by breaking objects down into 3D shapes. 2. Gesture. Draw characters with energy and movement. 3. Anatomy. Learning the actual bones and muscles of the body. 4. Color theory. Learning which colors to use and why. 5. Composition. Deliberately organizing elements on your canvas to make your illustration more impactful. So I haven't listed them all, but all of these are important aspects of art, all of which deserve and have entire books covering them. I'll put some in the description if you're interested, and I also have some videos you could check out. If you've gotten this far, you might be thinking, whoa, that's a lot I have to learn. And people often ask me how I manage to stay motivated to learn all of this stuff. The secret is, I don't. I practice art because I love and enjoy it. I know I say it a lot, but I can't overstate the importance of enjoying what you do. Imagine doing something you hate for thousands and thousands of hours and not even getting paid for it. Cause can you imagine that? I know I sure can't. Even when doing something as pedestrian as simply drawing boxes, I'm finding ways to have fun. I don't have a study schedule. I only study and draw things I feel like drawing. Just remember, fun comes before fundamentals. We all learn art a little differently, so I'm just giving suggestions that worked for me. Something else might work better for you, but you won't know until you try. Draw the subscribe button from reference if this helped you at all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye! Wait, am I muted? Oh, thank God I'm not. Okay. Excuse me. I think you might find what I'm about to say really unexpected. My nose is stuffed.
Good for you.
Welcome to Manwar.
Oh. Sir. Yeah. 10 games got tired of noobs.
A lot of games are pretty casual nowadays. They don't make assumptions about your skill level, and they lead your hand down the path. But you can only do that for so long without getting sick of it. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, 10 games that got tired of noobs. Starting out with number 10, it's High on Life. At the start, games these days tend to be pretty forgiving. Even tough games nowadays don't typically insult the player. Souls games don't straight up tell you to give up. They don't demoralize players right out of the gate, but when you've got a comedy game like High on Life, they're allowed to paint outside the lines a little. A lot of modern games assume that you have an incredibly fragile ego and do everything possible to massage it. And yeah, they're not wrong. A lot of us can be pretty brittle and sensitive at times, but High on Life basically tells you to get your head out of your ass during the opening minutes. You get a gun, the game tells you how to fire it, but if you just run around without firing a single shot, the game will notice.
Do you really not know what button to press? Just keep hitting buttons, triggers, all of them. One of them's gonna make me shoot. Try pressing anything, go nuts, smash them all. Is this your first game?
At first, it starts pleading with you to please start shooting. Just press a button, anything, before getting fed up and asking if this is your first effing game. If you press pause, he gets actually more irate and just calls you an idiot. That's not the only time he goes off on you either. If you take too long using his alt fire, he'll get annoyed as well. It's hard to imagine somebody not knowing how to shoot in an FPS game, but I guess every game is someone's first.
All right, you're having some trouble. That's fine. Listen, just keep trying until you get it. You know, I'm gonna be patient because it's my cool glob shot. Oh crap! Try again. Come on. Do you need any help aiming?
At number 9 is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Here's a case where noob behavior is somewhat justified. In Skyward Sword, at least the original Wii version, sword things were controlled by the Wiimote. Up until this point, not much finesse was required to defeat your enemies, just swing wildly and problem solve. So when you reach the boss, Deskai Girahim, it can be a bit of a brick wall of difficulty for people unable or unwilling to actually understand the motion controls. The trick with this guy is that he holds out his hand, and if you attack normally, he'll grab your sword, toss it aside, and then taunt you by saying in so many words that you are a novice who is just flailing around, which, as I said, up until this point in the game, has been fine. It's kind of a wake-up call battle, and for most people, it's probably the toughest fight in the game. To actually hit this guy, you need to bait him into holding his hand out and then attack from a different angle. Basically, you need to fully grasp the motion controls to have any chance of winning. Stick to noob tactics, and he will embarrass you every time. At number 8 is Spider-Man, the 2002 video game. Treyarch Spider-Man games have their highs and lows, with an absolute highlight of Bruce Campbell of Evil Dead fame as the narrator/tour guide. His sadistic delivery made even the most basic tutorials entertaining, and while he's kind of making fun of you the entire tutorial, there's one part in particular where he really goes hard. This is the part of the tutorial where you're meant to fight an enemy. This guy's meant to be the ultimate pushover, but it's possible to die, somehow. And if you do, Bruce really goes for the jugular. Describing it doesn't do it justice. You really just have to hear it. This is what he says when you lose this fight.
Okay, well, you just got pounded by the weakest enemy in the entire game. That's not something you're going to want to brag about, all right? Now, luckily for you, you can practice here until guys like this are just speed bumps on the way to bigger bad guys. Of course, if you suck, you'll just stay here forever.
I mean, if it wasn't Bruce Campbell, I don't know how big of a deal it would be, but it is Bruce Campbell. Coming from him, this is absolutely devastating. But frankly, if you did actually lose to this guy, you kind of do deserve it. You really almost have to be trying to lose in order to lose to this guy.
Now, this doohickey is the height meter, not to be confused with the width meter. It lets you know how much higher or lower you are from the next objective. Now, you are the little red dot, and your target is blue. So now's your chance to self-test for color blindness.
At number 7 is Styx Shards of Darkness, a 2017 stealth game that's actually pretty decent as far as these things go, as long as you're willing to put up with Styx and his alleged humor. Most of the jokes are not going to elicit much more than a groan, but his best bits are probably the death messages. Every time you die, Styx pops up on the screen to bust your balls about getting killed again, sort of like the Arkham games, but instead with Batman popping up and telling you to stop sucking rather than villains.
Realize using the controller with your feet's not gonna gain you an achievement, right?
Most of this stuff is pretty gentle ribbing, but there are some pretty good lines buried in here, like, did you stream that? I want a percentage on your best goblin death compilation. Most of them operate on that level, but the one where he says that he's not going to tell anybody that you turned down the difficulty, that one stings a bit.
Shit.
This isn't an easy game, so you'll see these screens more than a few times. Depending on who you are, you might find them kind of funny, or you might hate them. At least the game lets you turn them off in the settings if you do get sick of Styx.
Did you stream that? I want a percentage on your best goblin death compilation.
And number 6 is Chrono Trigger. You remember Gato, of course, the singing robot who's got metal joints. Beat him up and earn 15 silver points. Of course, you do. He's the combat tutorial. And losing to this guy, it's very, very hard, if not practically impossible. He's extremely easy. Literally all you have to do is press the attack button a few times, and he goes down. He's so easy, I assumed it was impossible to lose to him. I couldn't even find any evidence online of someone losing to him, but it is possible. I have footage of it. The only way anyone could possibly see this is by trying to lose, or by being the biggest RPG noob imaginable. You have to sit there, not touching the controls for minutes at a time, so when he does beat you, the inevitable putdown is pretty vicious. He might as well just give you some green eggs and ham. It's that much of a taunt in rhyme. What do you say to that? Nothing. Like, you say nothing to it. It's truly incredible. And number 5 is Splosion Man. 2009's Splosion Man was one of the first big Xbox Live exclusives, and one of the many games on the platform that helped kick off the indie game boom that's still going strong today. The concept here is very simple. You're a man who explodes, and you've got to get through a series of difficult platformer levels, sort of like a 3D Super Meat Boy with a triple jump. This game can be pretty rough. They included a way to help out players that are struggling, and this being 2009, they did it in the most insulting way possible. If you die a bunch of times on a single level, you'll get the option to take the way of the coward, which lets you just skip to the next level. I mean, the way they do that is bad enough, but when you actually start the level, Splosion Man is decked out in a pink tutu, just to make it explicitly clear what the game thinks of you. They really lay on the insults pretty thick if you need any help at all, but it's a lot more funny than it is frustrating.
Some water.
At number 4 is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. These games are basically visual novels, but the courtroom aspect does give you some room to really screw things up sometimes. Usually the game is pretty forgiving when you make the wrong choice or use the wrong piece of evidence during a case, but sometimes the gloves come off. Or maybe they just didn't fit in the first place, in which case obviously you must acquit. Sometimes a bad choice leads to a devastating double penalty that saps like 90% of your health. But other times, all the game needs to do is hit you with a particularly cutting verbal barb for you to really turn off your Switch or close your DS in disgrace. One of the most brutal put-downs comes extremely early in the games during the tutorial, the first turnabout. The judge starts by asking you a few extremely basic questions, like who is the defendant, who is the victim, what is the cause of death, you know, the most absolutely basic information, like stuff the lawyer would need to know going into the case. And when I say need to know, I mean like would probably know this stuff long before getting anywhere near a courtroom. Like, even in the wacky world of Ace Attorney, where anything goes in the courtroom, you at least need to know the basics. If you're not paying attention at all, you might be dumb enough to select the, wrong cause of death. Like, the opening clearly shows the victim bleeding from the head, and you can choose strangled as the cause of death. The judge completely demolishes you with his comeback. If you wish to hang yourself, Mr. Wright, you're welcome to, but not inside my courtroom. Ouch. The judge is usually portrayed as a easily swayed dullard, so for him to just put you on blast like that is, maybe you don't expect anything at this point because you haven't really been playing the game very long during the tutorial, but if you know him, it's unexpected. Totally deserve it though. If you can't get that basic question right, what hope do you have in this game? At number 3 is Braid, a puzzler from 2008, a very popular game. Another featured Xbox arcade game that's synonymous with that early indie game scene, for better or worse. The game is great. Not every game that gets tired of noobs is joking around. Sometimes they're completely dead serious. And the interesting thing about this one is that this example doesn't come from the game itself, but rather the game's official website, which is, by the way, down, but you can easily access it via the Wayback Machine if you do so wish. There, you can find a helpful page for the official Braid walkthrough and cheats, which I'm sure sounded helpful to any noobs out there, but it is bait, and yes, it does switch things up. Classic bait and switch move, yes. The first page plays it straight and describes exactly how to get the trivially easy first puzzle piece, but if you click the link to part 2, the whole thing just falls apart. It's actually just a big message about how you shouldn't use a guide, which comes off as very sanctimonious. I get encouraging people to play the game as intended, but I don't think this is helping. Any self-respecting noob is just going to want to use a guide even more now. Like, that's how noobs work. And number 2 is The Messenger. This game is, it does something similar to Styx, let's say. But for whatever reason, it just comes off so much more cutting when it gives you those death messages here. The gimmick is that when you die, this little demon named Quarble appears to revive you. He's not doing this out of the kindness of his heart, though. After bringing you back to life, he follows you around and steals any time shards that you might have, which is, by the way, the currency in this game. Every time you summon him, he makes some little quip about how you died, but unlike Styx, many of the messages only appear if you die a certain way. Like if you get killed by spikes, he says, "Pro tip, avoid the spikes." Sensible advice, if not a little obvious, perhaps insultingly so. If you get hit by a projectile, he says, "Oh, come on, that was an easy dodge." Are you playing with mittens on? Some of the message cut just a little too close, though. Like this one that says, if someone's watching, you can pretend there was input lag. There's even a series of messages where if you die a couple of times in a row, he says that you might as well give the controller to him because he's doing everything. Thanks, Quarble. You might be sick of me as a noob, but I think you have a stupid name. Quarble.
Okay, Quarble. Screw him.
And finally, at number 1 is Ninja Gaiden Black's Ninja Dog. This game suffers no noobs. If you want to play Ninja Gaiden Black, you gotta be good. Many tough games work like that, but this one goes a step further by making not just the first level very difficult, it straight up insults you when you die enough. For players starting out, dying 5 or 6 times in the first level is probably pretty common, especially if you're not used to playing action games. And if you do, then the game offers a new, easier difficulty called Ninja Dog. If that's all that happened, it wouldn't be so bad, but if you select this difficulty, there's an entire cutscene where you get insulted by Ayan and are forced to wear a purple ribbon for the rest of the game so everyone knows that you're playing on easy.
Master Ryu, or should I say, young Ninja Ryu Hayabusa. It seems I have greatly overestimated you. Oh well, we have no choice but to proceed. I will support you in every way that I can. Don't be overconfident. Just do what I say and perform your duties as competently as you can. You must complete your task without fail.
These guys just really want you to suffer regardless of difficulty level. Either you're getting killed constantly or you're being embarrassed by the game. Of course, getting made fun of a little and getting a little bow is a small price to pay for making the game easier, but it seems like the devs really don't want to put in the option for an easier difficulty. Probably was an obligation, or I don't know, maybe they just thought this was funny. It could be either way. It is funny, to be fair. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.
The story begins in a work office. Our protagonist works at the advertising department of the Grand Glory Company. Right away, we see that he is the type of person who works more than he can handle. His boss comes and starts saying that the company is going through a hard time, so a lot of people are being fired, so he should work more, sort of threatening him, you know? He then gives a list of potential clients for him to call them one by one, and that tomorrow he needs to show the results. So we can clearly see that his boss is a big asshole. So our protagonist keeps working even though he is really tired. Until something weird happened. Everything starts losing their focus and becomes pixelated. A mysterious figure appears on the protagonist's monitor. At first, he is confused if what he is seeing is real or not, but one of his co-workers notices that something is wrong and calls him. That's when we discover that his name is actually Howard. At first, he doesn't respond, but then returns to normal and says that he's all right. Just his vision got a bit blurry for a moment. His co-worker tells him to take some time off and relax, and reminds him that today, their boss would take everyone to a company dinner, which might seem great for us watching, but the protagonist thinks it is bullshit, since at the end everyone would have to split the bill, and since he doesn't earn much money, for him it wasn't worth the trip. His co-worker, noticing that Howard wouldn't want to go, probably because of the money, offers to lend him $20 so he can go. That guy is a real bruh. He says that they actually have no choice but to go, since the new director would be announced that night, and speaking of her, her name is Sabrina Luo. She came by the office with style, making all the men lose their shit just by looking at her. Our protagonist clearly knows that she is too much for him. Some hours later, everyone is happy at the dinner. They are all drinking and smiling when suddenly the protagonist starts having the same thing he had at the office, but this time it is way worse. His iris starts glowing, and he hears a loud buzz when suddenly his nerve system was all connected to some kind of virtual reality that only he could see. That same weird image was projected above him, while the other people near him were unable to see it. Then a robotic voice starts talking.
Of course they can't see it. The limited Universal Star makes extra effort to bring to his clients the best possible experience, helping them reach memorable improvements using virtual reality.
Right away, the protagonist gets worried, wondering what this thing has to do with him. Since he never bought anything related to virtual reality, he doesn't even have money for that. And as if it could read his thoughts, the weird robot responds, "Based on big databases and calculations, you're the perfect candidate for our dream test. You'll be the test candidate for our dreamland, where you can have many life experiences. Think of that as a greater version of a VR game. In other words, isekai." Funny how when the robot says that, he shows an image of the soldier from Counter-Strike and Boruto's teacher, Shino. Howard, as a good old shithead protagonist, tells the robot to stop that because he would need to work tomorrow and didn't have time for those things. Then the robot says that this system can take a copy of any real-life person to the dreamland, and that he could decide what would happen with his life. Then the robot asks him the big question, if he wouldn't want to live his life as a different person. But before our protagonist can give an answer, the new director enters the room alongside their boss. And what a director, huh? He formally introduces her to everyone there, one by one. He introduces her to a guy that is known by everyone for constantly flattering the boss all the time and on everything he does. This guy, who by the way is so drunk that he keeps staring at the women's boobs. The boss keeps presenting every worker to her, but simply ignores our protagonist. The woman obviously notices that and asks about about him. The protagonist starts shaking trying to talk to her, and as he was about to say his name, his boss interrupts him and says that he is a nobody, his abilities are mediocre, and that he basically has no communication capabilities, basically destroying the man. But we see that these are all lies, and for some reason, this fat son of a bitch just doesn't like the protagonist, because contrary to the other workers, he never tried to flatter him, and because of that, he tries to screw with the protagonist in every way he could. The woman doesn't seem to care and just greets everyone. The story follows, and everyone is going home. The dinner is over, and tomorrow everyone has to work again. Our protagonist Howard is a bit stressed out because he thought if he worked hard, he would be recognized at some point, but that didn't happen. His partner tries to cheer him up, saying that if he wants to grow, he doesn't have a choice but to fawn over the boss. Right after that, we see a flashback of this guy in his school years when he was one of the leaders of the students' movement against the system, the complete opposite of who he is now. The man simply sold himself to the system. After that, we see the boss trying to flirt with the hottie, with the director, saying that she doesn't need to waste her time with these insignificant workers, but she doesn't seem to care for what he's saying, just telling him that she knows what she's doing, while our protagonist overhears the conversation. The boss notices that the protagonist was listening and starts talking indirectly to him, saying that if someone hasn't realized yet what he wants to do, that person should be fired. Then something happens. Those words must have been the end of the line for Howard. He's angry because all his hard work and dedication were worthless. Even if it's outside or inside his workplace, he still suffers discrimination. That's enough for him. He was determined to leave his job tomorrow, but until then, he should calm down his anger. So he tells the robot to take a copy of the hottie, the director, and his boss to the Dreamland.
Instructions error. The system can only scan one person at Timmy. Base it on the request. The system determines that the target to be scanned is the hot, Sabrina Luo.
Howard was confused.
Scanning completed. Character created.
The story follows, and the protagonist goes back to his apartment, where he asks the robot why he didn't tell him that the system could only scan one person at a time, because he wasn't prepared for that.
The system has detected a huge rise of dopamine in your brain. In conclusion, you're loving it.
Howard becomes embarrassed by having the truth thrown at his face, saying that in fact it would be cool to have an NPC of a hot woman being his servant at the game. He isn't wrong. The robot says that the Dreamland system would be activated at midnight, and until then, he should find a safe place to sleep. The protagonist says that's fine, but he's also feeling too anxious to fall asleep. The robots say that this won't be a problem, because they obviously already predicted that situation, and that the system would interfere with the activation of his ascending reticular activating system. In other words, the part of his brain responsible for his sleep, making him fall asleep. Simple as that. Then the process starts. Howard, getting more and more nervous, starts feeling everything spinning, and his heart beating faster, until suddenly, he slept like a baby, just for almost immediately waking up, in a way that all of us would want to be awakened someday, with a half-naked 2D character above him, saying, "So we finally met." The woman quickly introduces herself as being the AI administrator of the Dreamland, and her name is ChatGPT. AI-63. The protagonist seems a bit confused. She explains to him about the shops and credit systems, where he can buy stuff that will be useful in the future, like a military knife costing 2 credits, and 100-ton truck that costs 40 credits, a temperature-controlling shirt and package of compressed food, and a battery with infinite energy that costs 200 points of credit. At first, we don't notice the value of these items, right? But I can assure you that each one of those things is extremely valuable for the place where he is heading to. She also explains that for every challenge he completes, he would gain some credit points and blah blah blah. The same old stuff we're already seen in others, isekai. The protagonist thanks her for the explanation and asks about the NPCs, if there is anyone that is strong for him to use. The AI then tells him that for 10,000 points she would be at his service, which the protagonist thinks is a steal. Then she warns him that the Dreamland is being activated, and if he doesn't have any other question, then shit is about to get serious right now. A portal that leads directly to the apocalyptic world appears, and when our protagonist approaches it to go to another world, so, he wakes up. He looks around, trying to see if what he just lived was real or not, then realizing he's at home and nothing changed. He was never an expert in technology, but even he should know that it is impossible to create a new world out of nothing, so he decides to just take a bath and prepare for work. After getting to his bathroom, he notices that the power is off, which is intriguing. He goes down the stairs of his apartment like normal, not noticing anything different, until he comes out of the door and notices that he is now alone, literally alone. There was no one nearby, and anyone anywhere. He then hears a weird buzz, and as he looks up, he sees a huge plane falling above him, and believe it or not, exploding right in front of him. And you might be wondering, so he died? That's how the story ends? And well, obviously not. In fact, thanks to the Kishimoto no Jutsu, he was able to hide behind a car just in time.
The Dreamlands Simulator. Apocalypse survival just started. What are you going to do to survive now that everyone in the world has disappeared? Difficulty level is 0. You have 180 days to survive.
Wait, did you say 180 days? But before he was able to say anything else, Howard notices a sound of liquid dropping coming from the car next to him. When he comes down to see what it was, a puddle of gasoline forms near him. Once again, using his Kishimoto no Jutsu, he was able to escape alive from a point-blank explosion while screaming, "Are you fucking kidding me?" The story goes on, and our protagonists now have recovered from the initial shock of arriving at this new world. He started to think about his situation more logically. He writes down his needs in his book so he can have a better understanding of what would be his priorities there. 180 days might look like a lot of time, but if I can get a lot of supplies, I might be able to survive. I can use those 180 days to think about what my life will be after I resign. Maybe I can even have some fun. And that's what he did. Our protagonist went to some clothing stores to find the best drip for the apocalypse, borrowed some jewels, drank the most expensive drinks, because at the end of the day, he was the only person in the world, right? After remembering that, he also remembered that the robot made a copy of that of his company's director. He started talking on the radio of a police car, trying to contact the server's GM, asking about the woman's copy. He heard a sound coming from behind, and instantly turns around just to see that it was a doggy, which for him made sense. Since every other human disappeared, the animals can run freely. He started thinking that the AI tricked him to play this game, and there would be no woman. He heard another animal, but this time it was nothing less than a freaking tiger. The protagonist almost pisses himself after the tiger jumped towards him, but instead of being ripped and eaten alive, he was kindly licked by the tiger. You might be wondering again, oh hey look, another Kishimoto no Jutsu, but this time there's actually a good reason for that. The protagonist knew that tiger, he was actually friendly to humans. In fact, a lot of tourists used to take pictures with him. So, okay, we'll let it pass this time. 7 days have gone by since our hero started living alone in a post-apocalyptic world, and the challenge was getting even tougher than he could imagine. The water in the taps had run out, and the only way to get more was from the bottles in the market. Without power to keep the refrigerator, the meat and vegetables started to rot, and now there were worms everywhere. Our protagonist was living by eating cookies lately, but he didn't know how much time his body could keep up with the lack of vitamins. Luckily, in one of his hunts for food, he found an old restaurant that had a diesel generator inside, which in a post-apocalyptic world, my friends, is pure gold. And to get even better, there was still some consumable meat in the freezer. Considering his findings, he decided to make that restaurant his new shelter from now on. During the day, he went out trying to get most of the supplies he could. During night, he plowed land to grow some veggies, using the rotten meat as a fertilizer. And then the days went by. Day 31. Howard drove through the surrounding areas, wondering what he would do today. His co-worker told him to search for a shop that sells some seeds, that it was gross to pick seeds from rotten vegetables. That was obviously an illusion created in his head, and Howard knew that. That's why he said he had a better idea, that he would take this hands off the wheel, and then it wouldn't take long before the car hit something and he would be killed. And when he wakes up, everything would be back to normal. His illusionary co-worker tells Howard to cheer up, since the garlic he had planted was finally sprouting, but he responds saying that this has nothing to do with his vegetables, that the entire city is looking like a dump with flies everywhere, and when he sleeps, it feels like there's worms walking through his body. During the night, he can't see anything, is suffocating like the whole world has abandoned him. That's it, guys. Our protagonist just gone completely nuts. His co-worker gives him a speech telling him to not give up, for him to wake up to reality, that he is the one playing the game, and not the game playing him. While he listens to his co-worker, something jumps out in front of his car, forcing him to brake suddenly. Another car appears in front of him, and yes, it is the company's director. She crashes her car, and the airbags are deployed. The car's airbags okay, not hers. After the crash, the woman passes out, but when she wakes up, she was already in another place. She notices that someone made a band-aid on her face, and she was wearing male clothes for some reason. Then she leaves the room and notices that she's in some kind of restaurant, and there is a diesel generator on, and there was also some fresh food on the table. She keeps searching for what's going on when she finds our protagonist shaving his beard, because after 30 days completely alone, bro, with a woman like that hanging around, he might as well let everything ready for action. He says he cooked for her and invites her to eat with with him. During the meal, she said that she remembered him from that company dinner, but she didn't know his name. He then introduces himself to her, noticing that this copy he brought to the game had the same memories as the real woman. She was impressed that he could make all of that by himself: electricity, food, shelter, and everything else. He thanks her and asks about her life and how she spent the last month. Then she says that suddenly everyone had vanished from the world and that he is the only living person that she found during the whole month. He asks what she plans to do now, and she says that haven't planned anything yet. Our protagonist goes for the attack and asks the lady to live there with him, saying that if she gets sick, he can take care of her and have everything she needs right there. That was a bit of a simp move, but considering the actual state of the world they're in, is not like she had a better choice. So she accepts the offer, but warns him that he isn't her type and he shouldn't try doing anything funny. Well, for someone who, for sheer loneliness, was talking to a dummy a few days ago, that was clearly a huge win. So he says that is fine by him. She says she would not take advantage of him or anything, and they can share the work. He said it was a good idea, but she should rest for today because tomorrow they would start to work for real. Even though he doesn't show it, our protagonist had been emotionally broken by this rejection, but their relationship was just starting. Continuing the story, the day starts with Howard waking up to a loud noise, wondering what the woman could be doing at this hour. He goes to find out and sees several boxes scattered in the hallway. When he asks what she's doing, Sabrina replies that she cleaned up the restaurant's storage to turn it into her room, and if he needed her, he could ring the bell. Howard gets really upset, but that's not all. She also threw away the mannequin he had leaning there, which in the last episode we saw was his only friend, just like Winsel was for Tom Hanks. She says she's going to get it back, but he says she doesn't need to, and angrily goes after the mannequin. But before leaving, he decides to tell her that they should each do their own laundry and cook their own food. She doesn't understand and asks why. He then says it's so they can see each other less often, and that this way she wouldn't have to be on high alert all the time to defend herself, and he wouldn't feel weird when he saw her. Man, the guy is totally tilted. She doesn't understand what's up with this guy, so he tells her that even though she's a beautiful and wealthy woman with a higher position in the company than his, in this world he wouldn't be the gentleman she expected him to be. In other words, folks, the guy went red pill because the woman threw away his mannequin. So we have a time skip of over 90 days. We are now on day 120 of the apocalypse, remembering that the protagonist needs to survive for 180 days to win. Apparently, in these 3 months that have passed, some things have changed in the city. The weather started to get colder, and the horrible smell disappeared. Sabrina filled the place with flower pots, which greatly improved the atmosphere. But despite everything, they don't talk much since that first fight. And even though she seems fine not talking for 3 months, he's not fine at all. He frequently talks to the mannequin Donald, his only friend in this apocalypse. He tells the mannequin that today they would go looking for meat, asking if he preferred spoiled meat from the market or rat meat. Thankfully, he decides they'll go fishing, but before that, they'll make a quick stop at the zoo to visit none other than Dummy, the tiger. Dummy had been feeding on other zoo animals and some meat the protagonist brought him from time to time. Suddenly, the tiger's spider sensor activates and he dashes out of nowhere. He saw nothing less than a servant, guys, and went straight for it. The detail is that the zoo's servants don't have horns, so these were wild servants. Nature was already encroaching on civilization, much like in The Last of Us. While the protagonist was realizing this, the weather started to suddenly change. The atmosphere turned eerie all of a sudden. Even thunder was rumbling. A powerful wind arrived, and then he realized it was a typhoon. He rushed into the car without understanding anything. How could such a huge typhoon suddenly appear on a sunny day? Then he remembered that all of this was a simulation, a game, and this typhoon was probably just another challenge in the game. The problem was that Sabrina goes cycling up the mountain every day, and given the time, she should be reaching the mountain top at that moment. So, not to lose the only woman left on the face of the earth, the protagonist raced back to his shelter with the car. Even though they weren't talking, he couldn't let anything happen to her, otherwise he would be completely alone again. Arriving there, he sees the door open, which he imagines means she hasn't returned home yet, so he heads as quickly as possible towards the mountain she usually climbs. The weather continued dreadful. Rain, wind, lightning everywhere, until he finally sees her. There she was, leaning against a post. Something had apparently happened. Her leg had a huge cut. But then Howard, our protagonist Chad, picks her up in his arms and takes her back to safety. They were apparently safe in a mansion at the top of the mountain that Sabrina used to visit. The woman continued to be soaked and trembling. He asks to take a look at her wounds, but she doesn't allow it. He says it's not the time to act tough. If she gets an infection, she could die. But she continues to refuse, saying she knows how to take care of herself. It's incredible how even being the only two people on Earth in an emergency situation, these two still don't get along. The protag says he has a plan. Since they don't know how long this typhoon will last, and the shelter they live in will likely be completely flooded, he suggests they make this mansion their new shelter. She simply agrees and asks how they should go about it. He says that since she's injured, there's not much he can do to help, so she should just stay there and wait. Then the protag, who in one scene is a huge Chad, in the next becomes a lone calf caught in a storm, while the woman just waits, and the weather kept getting worse to the point where it started to snow. Arriving at the shelter, he sees that everything was already flooded, and unfortunately, even their generator had given up. He decides to grab as much food as he can, until a rush of water and wind knocks down the vegetables they had harvested. He decides to grab whatever he can and make a run for it. Their situation was not good at all. The food they had would last a maximum of 2 days. It was impossible to fish in that gale. Seeing himself in a dead end, he finds himself having to resort to something he had never imagined. He arrives at the zoo, and there is Dummy, the tiger, all injured, apparently having been in a fight. The protag's plan was to use the tiger's hunting skills to get food, but as soon as he sees the animal's condition, the young man tries to get him into the car to tend to his wounds, but the tiger doesn't even flinch. Howard shouts, trying to convince the tiger to follow him, but the tiger roars back, indicating that he'll do as he pleases. The protag tells himself that this is just a game, and he shouldn't get so involved. So he turns around and leaves, leaving the tiger there, in a very sad scene. Back at the house on the mountaintop, the protag sees Sabrina sprawled on the sidewalk. He asks what happened, and she says she wanted to collect rainwater to boil for them, but ended up falling and can't get up. So our hero does the good deed of carrying her inside, presenting us with this beautiful scene. The guy, in an ultra Chad red pill frenzy, slapped the hottie so hard she even moaned, saying that from now on, he would be the one making decisions there. Then he threw her on the bed and said he was going to get a first aid kit. After cleaning the brunette's wound, she asked what he planned to do. He said he once saw a herd of deer, and tomorrow he would try to hunt. She reminds him that wild deer always remember the smell that represents danger to them, and stay extremely alert to it. He says it doesn't matter because, either way, he has weapons. Speaking of weapons, he shows her a pistol he found under her pillow when he went to get the vital supplies from their old shelter. He says he left the bullets in it and hands the gun back to the woman. She asks if he doesn't want to keep the gun. He says no, and hopes that this gesture might erase her prejudice against him. And so they say goodbye, because he needs to prepare for the hunt the next day. And in this vibe, day 121 of the apocalypse arrives. It's snowing outside, so our protag bundles up and prepares to go hunting. He thinks to himself that he doesn't even know how to kill a chicken, let alone a deer. But as he pondered these things, a freaking pack of hungry wolves was lurking. Our protag sets out on the hunt, the freezing cold making his breath turn into vapor, and all that could be heard was the wind and his footsteps in the snow, until he seemed to have heard something, so he quickly turns and takes a position. When he was ready to shoot, there was nothing there. He had lost count of how many times this had happened. He could hear them. They must be close by. It's as if they know every move he makes. Maybe Sabrina was right. The deer can recognize his scent. Tired of wasting energy, he decides to try using the fishing net. The problem is, a sinister storm just happened, and in this situation, the river's current becomes very strong. The protag doesn't care and casts the net anyway. Screw it. Now it's just praying it works out. But immediately he feels a tug on the net, and before he could think of anything, he is literally pulled into the river, and man, imagine how cold that is. As soon as he emerges from the water, he doesn't even want to fish anymore and just thinks about going back home and warming up by the fire. But it's at this moment that he sees what he came looking for, a deer. He quickly hides so the deer doesn't see him and starts looking for the gun until he pulls a shotgun from his bag. Then there's no mistake, just aim and shoot. So the protag takes a deep breath and... he missed. Damn, what a dumbass. The recoil from the shotgun was so strong that it hit him hard in the nose, making it bleed, man. This protag is really clueless. He wasted a ton of resources, fell into freezing water, hurt himself, and now, guess what? Of course, the wolves. Luckily, this fool still had the shotgun, so he had a chance to stay alive. But the wolves, unlike our protag, are not at all dumb. They realize that this guy is injured and don't even try their luck. They just bolt. The protag didn't quite understand, but in the mess mess he was in, he should be grateful for that. Well, back at the mansion on top of the mountain, the protag arrives home, and hey, the brunette was waiting for him, naked, wrapped in a blanket, warming herself by the fire. Finally, something was going right for this guy. He doesn't think twice and starts undressing as quickly as he can. But the guy had just literally fallen into a river in the snow, so all he really wanted was to warm up by the fire. The brunette is initially shy, but soon takes a peek and ends up seeing a photo in the protag's wallet of another woman who also had a well-endowed bust. She asks about this photo, while by now he's naked around the fire. He says she's an ex-girlfriend, she says she's cute and asks why they broke up. He says he wanted a family, but she wasn't ready for that. Then he asks about her, if she's dating someone. And unfortunately, folks, she says yes. The name of the cuckold, I mean the guy, is Lawrence. She says he has a PhD from MIT and that he is the CEO of a technology company. So the guy is a big shot. The protagonist takes the opportunity to throw a jab, saying that the guy might be successful but lacks good taste in women because it's pure torture to live with a woman like her. The brunette doesn't take it lightly and yells at him, but in the heat of the moment, she forgets that the guy is naked there and ends up seeing him with his pistol out. On impulse to cover her eyes, she drops the blanket and her melons are exposed, much to our joy, and especially to the protagonist, who even starts bleeding from the nose. The woman is extremely embarrassed and throws things at him, yelling for him to leave immediately, which he does, but still with the beautiful image of her melons in his mind. But regardless, having an erection doesn't help you resist the mood and hunger, does it? So the next day comes, and our hero continues in his attempt to hunt a deer, although all he manages to do is just see a mere shadow of them. Every time he gets close, they disappear. Not to mention, in real life, he had never even touched a gun before. So, well, you can understand why he acted like a fool earlier. Nevertheless, he keeps trying, but there are no results. The good side of all this is that at least now the brunette is talking to him more frequently, and she doesn't complain when he comes home empty-handed. For some reason, she seems to be getting weaker, which is not good at all. Her injuries don't seem to be improving. Even though their bellies had not been full for a long time, the protagonist still held on to hope that things would get better tomorrow. He mentions setting up a trap, a pit with sharp wooden stakes at the bottom, covered with some cabbage leaves. His hope is that, being winter, the wolves won't resist the temptation of the leaves. Sabrina says he should have discussed this with her. After all, it's very risky to do so much manual work in this situation. The protagonist says he's at his limit. He doesn't have the strength to set up another trap like that. In other words, he's gone all in. Tomorrow, they either survive or they don't. So the next day, arriving at the spot where the trap was set, he sees it didn't work. Wait, actually no, there's blood. The animal just escaped from there. So he immediately follows this blood trail, praying that the animal has died. Finally, he reaches a clearing where he sees two wolves devouring the flesh of an animal, the animal that was probably going to be their food. Realizing it was now do or die, he pulls out his gun, and in a frenzy of hunger, fear, and anger, he fires at the animals. Obviously, he misses all shots, and the animals just flee, taking the pieces of the dead deer with them. Realizing that his last hope of not starving to death had disappeared before his eyes, our protag falls to his knees in the snow. He tries to tell himself that it's just a game, that he should control his emotions, but the truth is that the frustration of failing was too much. He screams with all his might, a cry of desperation of someone who has reached their limit. And so we arrive at day 126 of the apocalypse. All they have left to eat is literally a tomato and a cabbage leaf. Sabrina says he can eat. After all, she hasn't helped at all lately. Howard says they're both dying. She doesn't need to be so proud. She silently agrees. Then she tells how until she turned 18, she was just a puppet manipulated by others, mainly by her father, who was a very authoritarian man and used to keep her locked in her room most of the time, unable to go out and play with other children. The guy was so awful that he wouldn't even let her draw, man. He said she was different from the other siblings, and that sooner or later she would abandon the family like her mother did. The guy had a serious emotional problem and took it all out on her, saying that she could only bring honor to the family by obeying him, and that without their family's power, she was nothing. That explains why she wants to be so independent nowadays. It's the way she found to deal with that trauma. Howard says he understands her, and that they both had a crappy life. He tells her that he always tried really hard in everything he did, but was never rewarded for it. always lived a mediocre life without being recognized by anyone. She asks if he has any kind of strength that could make him stand out. He says that if he has any strength, it's never giving up once he decides to do something. He's watched a lot of Naruto. That's his ninja way. She asks if he fought for what he wanted because the world is full of people who work hard, and the only way to be recognized is to shine brighter than others. Then she says her purpose is to be independent, and he'll know his when he really strives for something. He asks if helping her survive will earn him her recognition. He says all he ever wanted was to hear once from someone that he mattered. Sabrina asks how she can prove she's independent by letting him help, but the reality is they're almost starving, so she lets go of her pride and accepts. The main character then takes the cabbage leaf and leaves the room all wobbly, practically too weak to do anything. Before leaving, he says that if he doesn't come back home after 3 days, it's probably because he's dead, and she'll find his body in a stream east of the mansion. And if that happens, she'll do the right thing, so he leaves her alone and scared. Oh man, I hope he's not talking about cannibalism. Outside the mansion, Howard talked to Donald, the mannequin who had long been his only friend in this apocalyptic world. He tells him that he never really fought for anything because he never had the courage to pursue something. Instead, he just kept complaining about everything. He acknowledges that he did this to shift the blame to others or the world for not being able to take his own responsibilities. He always took the easy way out to avoid unpleasant environments and difficult choices. He says he could have handled many things better with his family, his ex-girlfriend, in his studies, and even in his current situation, but in the end, he would just shrink into a safe corner where he could lament about things, like a big crybaby. Our protagonist tells Donald, the mannequin, that he will stop whining and never do it again. He then pushes him off the mansion balcony, symbolizing the death of who he used to be. The story continues, and we see a feminine hand picking up a cleaver in a kitchen. It's Sabrina, standing over a fallen body, Howard's lifeless body. She raises the cleaver, and as she strikes, she wakes up. It was a dream. She was so shocked by what Howard had said to her before he left that she literally dreamed about it. Interestingly, if we stop to think about it, because remember folks, they're living in a post-apocalyptic world created within their minds as a dream. The project's name is literally the Dreamland. They shouldn't be able to dream in that world, so the fact that she had a dream inside is really relevant. But anyway, let's go to day 127 of the apocalypse. We see Howard shoveling snow and walking breathlessly to the edge of the river he fell into the other day. He remembers that when he fell into the river, it was the only time he managed to get close to a deer. The other times, they always managed to escape without him having a chance to get close, meaning the water covered his scent. Realizing this, he has an idea, which is more like a gamble, but in the current situation, it's the only chance he has to survive. Then we see Sabrina trying her best to stay awake because she is afraid to sleep and dream about it again. Due to hunger and lack of sleep, she begins to have hallucinations of her father, telling her she is pathetic and that she wouldn't be in this situation if she had followed the path he laid out for her. She shouts at him to disappear, which works momentarily, then grabs the tomato, which is literally the only thing she has to eat, and remembers Howard's words and the deal they made. This gives her the motivation she needs to keep fighting and prove she can survive on her own. A few hours pass, and we see her struggling to stay awake until she hears a strange sound and realizes there's a darn rat trying to eat her tomato, but she doesn't have the energy to do anything but watch. Her father appears again, laughing at her and her weakness. He talks about the choices she made, trying to prove she was independent instead of following the path he chose for her. Then we see that Lawrence, her supposed husband, is actually an old limp. Yes, he's rich as hell, but he's almost dying, and all she had to do was stay with him, and once he was dead, she would inherit everything. In other words, even her marriage was arranged by her father. He says that if she can't even endure a little pain, how could she fend for herself? He says she wasn't made to be a strong woman. She's just trying to act like one, but in reality, she's just a fragile and pathetic woman who will end up being devoured by rats. Oh man, this story is getting heavy. Then we see a deer in the snow, calmly eating a leaf of kale. The scene shifts back to Sabrina, and she's holding a gun, the one the protagonist gave her in the last video. She says she doesn't need to be saved by him, didn't need anyone to save her life. We see the reflection of her gun in the rat's eye, and at the same time, the reflection of a shotgun in the deer's eye. Yes, this was Howard's bet. He buried himself in the snow and waited until a deer fell into his trap, and the moment had arrived. So at the same time he fires his shotgun at the deer, Sabrina shoots at the rat, stealing her food, and that's how the chapter ends. The next chapter begins with the deer's body lying in the snow, and from within the snow, we see our protagonist emerging with an ultra Chad Sigma look. When he sees that his plan worked, he starts laughing and shouts in celebration of his victory. Then we see Sabrina eating her tomato, and not only that, she's roasting the rat she killed. Yeah, it's the apocalypse, it's like that. Then someone enters the room. It's Howard, bringing with him the deer he hunted. She's speechless when she sees that he succeeded, but the guy has been without food and probably freezing for a while now, so he loses his strength and collapses on the floor. She immediately gets up to help him and sees that there's even ice encrusted on his clothes, meaning he suffered to get this deer. A few hours pass, and we see that Sabrina has already cut the deer's meat and is heating water in a tub to put Howard in to see if he recovers. She asks if he's feeling better, but there's no response until he grabs her arm and she startles. He calls her with a weak voice, and she approaches. He asks if he's earned her recognition. She's surprised but says yes, that he's amazing, so he becomes happy, finally being recognized by someone. Sometime later, a deer meat soup is ready. Sabrina calls our protagonist to eat, but he doesn't respond. He still seems very unwell. She recognizes this and decides to do something. Then she opens his mouth to feed him, but not in the way we imagined. She literally passes the food from her mouth to his mouth, like feeding a baby bird. I don't know if I find this gross or cute, to be honest. Hours pass, and our protagonist is still in bed, shivering from the cold. She puts 3 blankets over him, but realizes that this probably won't be enough. So she looks at our protagonist, bites her lip, and does what you're thinking. She starts undressing to lie down with our protagonist and warm him with her body heat. Then she lies down with him and says that everything will be okay. Day 130 of the apocalypse begins, and Howard, our protagonist, wakes up. However, unlike all the other days so far, this time he's not alone. He looks to the side and sees Sabrina sleeping next to him in a cuddling position. This immediately shocks him, especially when he realizes she's completely naked. She notices he's awake, and as she begins to leave, he holds her, mentioning that he still feels a bit unwell. Then she starts talking about his ex-girlfriend, telling him to tell her again why they broke up. He says she thought they were too young to have something more serious. She asks for the other reason, and he says it's because he wanted a family. Then she says she does too. He doesn't quite understand. After all, she wanted to prove to everyone that she was an independent woman. She says she's already doing that. The fact that she is successful is not proof of anything. It's just a goal she set for herself to try to break those limitations. But in the end, she didn't care about anything more than that. It's like she escaped from one prison to fall into another. How could she say she's independent when she spent the whole day unable to make a decision alone? The protagonist is at a loss for words. After all, he never even set a goal in his life. Then she asks if he doesn't want to have a family with her. Man, how do you say no in a situation like this? The protagonist takes a moment to respond, making her think she was too hasty. Then he takes her hand and says that this is exactly what he wanted. After all, working so hard to try to be recognized by others ended up keeping him from having a family. She tells him that they will survive together, and he says yes, and that now having a family is his motivation. And then, folks, they finally kiss. And we have a good amount of scenes of that I will have to censor because, you know, we have kids watching. Until in the final climax of the act, Sabrina remembers when she was a teenager, and her father literally tied her arms and legs and covered her mouth, saying it was time to introduce her to the world of adults, and then calls a man and a woman to enter her room, tell them to take off their clothes and do what you are thinking about on the couch. Sabrina turns her face away to avoid watching, but her father holds her head and forces her to watch, saying that she needs to learn how to give pleasure to that old man she was going to marry. Man, that guy is messed up, seriously. Then he says something that left me confused, mentions that it's better if they both look like a real father and daughter, and for that, he would change her name. From then on, she would be called Sabrina Luo. What I didn't understand is whether she started living with him after her mother left or something like that. Maybe this will be explained better in the future anyway. After they finish their act of love, we have a time skip of 1 month. We're on day 160 of the apocalypse, reminding you that the main character has to survive 180 days in this post-apocalyptic world. He and Sabrina have been living as a couple since then. The main character wasn't fully recovered from his near-death experience, but at least he could work. The deer meat had run out, but he was managing to catch some fish in that river. Furthermore, they started working on a vegetable greenhouse, and Sabrina was putting in a lot of effort. Speaking of her, she calls our main character and says she has a gift for him. He gets all excited, thinking it's something naughty, but we soon find out that no, she made him a deerskin poncho, which was extremely useful when hunting deer. The tables have turned for our main character, folks. Returning home after the hunt, he sees sees the lamppost where he found Sabrina in the storm weeks ago, so he decides to visit the places where they spent the early days of the apocalypse. He goes to the old restaurant, remembers Donald, his mannequin friend, passes by the place where the plane exploded in front of him on his first day of the apocalypse, and then decides to go to the zoo to see how his tiger friend was doing. He calls for Dummy, a whole deer leg in his hand to offer, until he hears a loud roar, and even with his leg badly injured, he starts running towards the sound. When he gets there, he sees his friend being attacked by a pack of wolves. He grabs his shotgun, and the wolves instantly notice his presence, but before they could do anything, he pulls the trigger, injuring and scaring them off. He turns to Dummy, telling him it was okay now, but then realizes he was too late. His friend was badly injured, only emitting a weak purring. Howard touches him, trying to calm the trembling animal. Memories of their time together flood his mind. Dummy was a good creature. The main character apologizes for not arriving in time, then the tiger looks him in the eyes, as if understanding what he was saying. Howard says that soon he wouldn't feel pain anymore, then aims his shotgun at his friend's head, saying he would miss him and would avenge him. The tiger understands that his end has come. A tear runs down Howard's face at the moment he pulls the trigger. And so ends the life of Dummy, the tiger. My friends, nature is tough. The story continues, and we find Howard in a bathtub with Sabrina. She notices that he seems a bit down and asks if something has happened. He says that nothing happened, but it's getting colder every day, and the world outside is becoming increasingly perilous. He asks if she could stay home for the next few days. Not that he's trying to confine her or anything. He's just worried. She says it's not a problem, especially since she has a lot of work to do in their greenhouse. So, in that romantic atmosphere, they start getting affectionate again. But as the saying goes, my friends, a protagonist's joy is short-lived, and soon he has to go hunting again. Now he's an Ultra Chad Sigma, not only wearing a deerskin outfit to disguise his scent, but also having learned to handle the shotgun and a military knife properly. The guy has become a killing machine, but just like him, the wolves have been hunting deer to survive. We see a pack chasing a group of deer, one of the wolves leaping onto a surrounded deer. Its extremely sharp fangs ready to tear the animal apart in a deadly attack. The wolves know how to survive too. Then they hear something. Could a deer have been left behind? The wolf goes after the potential easy prey, but this was the trap. The animal lets out cries of pain, but it's too late. Howard, the ultimate Chad, stands before him, lifting his knife and ending the animal's life with a single strike. Once again, another animal. Sabrina calls out to him, but he doesn't even notice until another attempt, and he snaps out of his trance. She tells him that he's been very absent lately, and asks him to tell her what the problem is so she can help. He says it's nothing serious and tells her to go back to sleep. Sabrina doesn't know what to say to Howard, who soon returns to his trance. All that's in his mind at this moment are the wolves. He needs to rid his family of this threat. The pack of 4 wolves was now reduced to 3 after their last encounter with the protagonist. They split up upon hearing a strange sound, and Howard was in the vicinity. One of the wolves approaches a bush that it senses is amiss. It sniffs an odd yet strangely familiar scent emanating from it. Suddenly another wolf emerges from within the bush, or so it seemed. The little wolf runs towards it, but before it can realize, the barrel of a shotgun is shoved into its mouth, the barrel emerging from within the bush. A point-blank shot explodes the poor animal's head. The remaining 2 wolves hear everything and quickly spot him. Our protagonist, Howard, the Ultra, Master, Sigma Chad, Red Pill. The 2 remaining wolves stare directly at him, and what he sees is a murderous expression, one of pure hatred. Day 170 of the apocalypse. Only 10 days of the game remain, but our protagonist doesn't seem to dwell on that much. In fact, all that's in his mind at this moment are those accursed wolves. That murderous gaze has truly stuck in his head, and he'll only find peace again once he's dealt with the remaining 2 wolves. Sabrina calls for him, mentioning that today they'll have steamed fish and roast meat. She believes she has improved a lot in the kitchen and prepared this special lunch for him, but the protagonist couldn't care less. He says he'll just grab some dried meat and go on a trip for a few days, leaving Sabrina frustrated. She says that in the past few days, he always leaves early and returns late, asking what's keeping him so busy that they can't even eat together. Howard says there are some things he needs to finish to be at ease, and walks past her, displaying no emotions as a Sigma would. She implores, tears welling up in her eyes, for him to at least tell her what's wrong. He thinks that if he tells her about the wolves, with her proud nature, she'll surely want to do something about it. So he simply says, it's nothing serious, leaving Sabrina heartbroken. Day 173. Sabrina wakes up to the sound of hammering, realizing that the windows of her room have been completely boarded up. The protagonist was outside nailing everything shut. He explains that it's because it's getting colder, and he wanted to reinforce the windows. She tells him she didn't ask for his help. He immediately cuts her off, saying he's not in the mood for jokes. She insists she's serious. He's been acting strangely, not telling her anything. It's like they've reverted to how they were at the beginning. He claims she's mistaken, but she persists. She says they rushed into a relationship and asks if he had thought of all this as a one-night stand. He denies it, stating that everything he's been doing is to protect this house. Then she explodes and tells him to finally reveal what's going on. If he truly wants to protect this house, he needs to show her some respect at least. The protagonist is left speechless for a while until he too explodes. He says they agreed that she would stay home while he looked for food, and she couldn't help him with what he was about to do. Finally, he says that he'll tell her everything when he's done. Sabrina is disappointed, turns her back on him and walks away. The protagonist, like a true emotionless Sigma, ignores everything that happened and simply thinks that he's out of nails and needs to go to the hardware store to get more. The only thing occupying his thoughts are the two wolves and how they've made a fool of him. The snow has been increasing, and soon their tracks will disappear. The temperature has also dropped to nearly minus 30 degrees, and it's only going to get worse. He needs to take a break from these hunts. His real concern now is how to keep them warm. He'll have to deal with the wolf issue when the snow stops. Arriving at the tool store, he notices that it looks well maintained, and he'll probably find everything he needs there. So, he begins searching for the things he needs until he stumbles upon a book. When he looks, he sees that it's a diesel generator maintenance manual. Well, who would have thought, my friends? Immediately, he starts flipping through the book and realizes that he can fix the generator left at their old shelter with this. But as he contemplates this, the store's television turns on by itself, displaying a lot of static on the screen. The protagonist jumps in surprise, and then she appears, the artificial intelligence simulation administrator. He looks at her, but at first he's not quite aware. It's only after a few seconds that he remembers he's living in a dream. He had completely forgotten about it. The AI tells him she just came to warn him that the simulation will end in a week, and that he should start preparing to return. Howard is in shock because going back to his old life was something that hadn't even crossed his mind anymore. The scene shifts to Sabrina writing a note to Howard. The note says they need some time apart, that she's going somewhere else, and he shouldn't come after her. Then she turns and leaves. Back to the protagonist. With the TV the AI had appeared on broken on the floor, he gathers all the things he needs and is ready to leave when suddenly sounds of paws emerge. Then Howard sees it. The wolves had followed his trail to that place. He shows no fear and says he understands the wolves' anger. After all, he killed their family. He tries to run to where his weapon is, but the wolves are faster and won't let him do that. He's amazed by the intelligence of the animals, then realizes that right to his left, the exit door is open. He sees this is his only chance and bolts out of the store with the wolves close behind. His car is a few meters away. He runs straight towards it, but his leg that had been bothering him since the day he fell in the river starts to hurt again, and he weakens. This is all the wolves needed to jump on him and knock him into the snow. The bigger wolf violently bites his head, while the smaller one bites his leg. Howard, feeling excruciating pain, immediately starts unbuttoning his deerskin coat, managing to free himself from the bigger wolf's bite. He takes the opportunity to punch the smaller wolf, biting his leg. Quickly, he pulls out his knife and strikes the animal. Meanwhile, the larger wolf, bloodthirsty, comes to bite him in the back, a violent bite that tore a chunk out of his back. Howard stabs the wolf's eye, but his knife breaks with this strike. Now things have turned worse for him. The wolf lunges again with bestial fury, but our protagonist manages to stop it with his legs and throws the animal away before it can bite his face. Then he advances toward the creature with his broken knife, delivering a blow right into the wolf's other eye, which lets out a horrific scream of pain while attacking Howard's face with its claws. Then the protagonist raises the hilt of his knife and strikes the wolf's head with all his might. The frenzy of battle is such that he continues to strike the animal in an uncontrolled rage, until a final blow dislocates his shoulder, and he releases the hilt of his knife into the snow, leaving the animal seemingly dead. He grabs his bag to get away from there as quickly as possible, but behind him, we see that the battle was not yet over. We see a flashback of Howard asking the artificial intelligence if this world would continue to exist after he returned to his reality, asking if Sabrina would live alone there. He says he can't leave her behind and wants to stay there. Back to the present, we see the wolf all battered but still thirsting for revenge, using its last strength to bite our protagonist's hand, who simply remains standing, standing, looking at the animal. He says he admires its willpower but can't give it the revenge it desires because he needs to protect Sabrina no matter what happens. He then pulls his arm from the animal's mouth, tearing his skin. He manages to open the car and toss the bag with the generator repair equipment inside. But at that moment, he feels an excruciating pain. Not just one, but both wolves were biting his legs. Man, these creatures are immortal. Howard tells himself he can't die, not now. So he opens the trunk, from where a pistol falls. It was Sabrina's weapon. With no time to think, he turns to the animals devouring his leg and fires, making them release him and run away. Howard quickly closes the car door, so the wolves couldn't attack him anymore. His whole body trembles from the adrenaline of the fight. He tells himself again that he needs to fix the generator at all costs. This way, there's a great chance Sabrina will survive after he leaves from there. He tries to start the car and nothing happens. Tries again, and nothing. Apparently, the oil tank had frozen due to the minus 30-degree cold. He would need to warm the car for it to start working again, but there was no more time. He was very weak. Outside, the wolves continued to lurk. Howard had no more strength to carry on. He was losing consciousness. Then he wakes up. He was safe and sound, with Sabrina by his side. She says she found him unconscious with the broken car and brought him back in her car. He said he thought he had died, and she says she thought the same thing when she saw him. He asks if she saw anything near him when she found him, and she says he was holding a bag, which she brought back home. When he remembers the bag, he immediately tries to get up and tells her that with that, he can fix the generator. She says he is still very hurt and needs to rest a bit more before doing that, but he says no. He needs to do this. This is the last item on his to-do list. She says, okay, already accepting the fact that the protagonist doesn't listen to anything she says anyway, and he just remains silent. The story continues, and we see Howard in the garage fixing the generator, and voila, we have electricity. Yeah, science. The protagonist almost cries when he sees that all his effort was worth it. He shouts to Sabrina, asking if she sees this, and from inside, she says he's an idiot, all happy with his achievement. Howard walks back home when he sees something. The car Sabrina used to bring him back. He sees that the airbag was deployed, and the front of the car was completely dented, plus there was blood on the bumper. Looking more closely, he finds a wolf's canine tooth stuck in one of the tires, and then it becomes clear what happened, right guys? The protagonist had depleted all the wolves' HP, and Sabrina arrived to claim the kills. After imagining the scene that probably happened, Howard tries to get up but has a blackout. His vision blurs, and he almost loses consciousness. The injuries he suffered in his fight against the wolves are very deep. He'll end up dying if he's not treated by a doctor soon. Continuing his investigation, he supposes that the dent in the car's bumper was probably caused by hitting a tree, and as we see in a flashback, Sabrina literally flattened the last remaining wolf against a pole. Damn man, that woman is fierce. So our protagonist finally acknowledges his companion's actions. Returning inside the mansion, he sees 2 wolf skins hanging to dry. Sabrina was cutting meat in the kitchen when Howard arrives and hugs her from behind, thanking her for everything she did for him. She asks when he became so mushy after all. Wasn't he the Sigma red pill? He tells her not to be so petty and asks her to forgive him. Sabrina simply asks if he has ever tasted wolf meat. He says no, so she says they will today. Howard tells her to cook a lot because they will have a lot of work to do in bed today. Yeah, he likes it. Day 178. Just 2 days left until the end of the apocalypse, folks. The city was completely frozen, literally. But for the first time in days, the sun had risen. Sabrina sees this through the bedroom window and tells Howard, who's still lying down. He doesn't respond, so she asks what's wrong with him, and the guy is really worn out, folks. She asks if he has a cold and goes to get medicine for him. The main character calls her with a very weak voice and tells her not to worry because it's not a cold. She gets tense but tries to lighten the mood by saying he's just joking and that he'll be fine soon. She mentions that he has been through very difficult situations, like moving house in a storm, hunting in a blizzard, and fixing the power generator. Thanks to him, they had electricity again. She says it's absurd that someone like him doesn't receive recognition as a boss, and that if they were still in the company, she would nominate him as the best employee of the quarter. Then Howard says, "Thank you, my boss and lovely wife." Sabrina says she hasn't agreed to marry him yet, and tells him to take the medicine all at once. The main character struggles to grab the glass, but his vision blurs. He has a black ceiling again. Sabrina asks if he's okay, but the glass falls to the floor and shatters into 1,000 pieces. Howard wakes up to this beautiful sight before him. Sabrina was only in her underwear, waiting for him to wake up. She tells him that she figured out his trick. He was just pretending to be sick so that she would worry about him, saying that this time she won't punish him. But if he continues this, she can't guarantee anything. Then she asks if he wouldn't like to close your eyes, kids. Try a new position. The main character kills the mood instantly and tells her to get up because they need to talk. Sabrina is shocked because she can't believe he doesn't want to do that with her, asks what kind of man he is, and then screams, trying to get him up. She cries, realizing that her efforts to make him better are not working. He says he doesn't have much time to say this, but he knows he's dying. Then he says the gas can last about 3 months, and when it runs out, she should go north because there's a huge reserve there. He tells her about the vegetable seeds for her to plant, that he labeled all of them with their correct names. He asks if she knows how to operate the diesel generator and says that when she moves, she should choose a house that protects from the cold, not just for its beauty. Day 180 of the apocalypse. We have finally reached the last day, my friends. We see our main character all disheveled, weak, injured, in a wheelchair looking out at the view from the mansion balcony with Sabrina. She says that today is warmer than yesterday and that soon the temperature will go back above 0. She says that when the snow melts, she'll head north to try to find other survivors. Howard then asks Sabrina if she ever loved him. She looks at him with an expression that indicates she knows she's about to say something that will hurt him, and then she says no. Howard smiles because that means he could leave without any worries. He tells himself that it was time to wake up from this dream, and then closes his eyes for the last time. Sabrina continues talking, saying that he is a man who is full of himself and never takes others' feelings into consideration. Why would she love him? She says he has no good qualities, that when she was sad, he never said anything good to cheer her up, that he did everything on his own. She simply breaks down and starts crying over his body, calling him an idiot. But this time, Howard could no longer hear. His consciousness was no longer there. Howard finally returns from the post-apocalyptic world. The artificial intelligence was waiting for him on the other side of the portal and congratulates him on completing the challenge. Howard slowly comes to himself and asks what happened. He feels like he's lived through many experiences. Yes, clan, the protagonist has returned to being the same goofball from the beginning of the story. The AI says that it's normal for him not to precisely remember what happened there, because the system disturbs his memory so that he doesn't confuse real life with a dream. But within a month, he will gradually remember the entire dream, and that when he regains peace in his heart, it will be much easier to accept the dream as something that really happened. Howard says he remembers something. He had told himself millions of times that he couldn't forget something important, and when he thinks about it, he becomes very sad instantly, crying. He asks if the dream world will continue to exist. The AI says it was just a game, that it's over now. No matter how many memories he has, he needs to remember that it was just a dream, nothing more than that, and that he had a real life to live. He agrees, and says that asking this question was the only thing from the dream he remembers. Everything had become a blur in his memory. Then the robot says it's time to calculate the scores and points its wand, or whatever that is, towards the portal, where we see the final scores of the game. The difficulty level, surprisingly, was 0. The grade for our protagonist was a B, and the credits earned were 50. Man, the guy almost died in a 0 difficulty game. Imagine how it's going to be from now on. Howard asks what the evaluation criteria are for him to have gotten a B, so the robot explains that what will determine his final score are the survival chances of the person left in the world. For example, if he were the only survivor, he would have scored a D. Killing the animals that threatened their lives and being able to generate electrical energy are things that increase the survival chances of his partner, so he receives a higher score. But if he had managed to get all the necessary equipment, abundant food, and built a transmission station that they could use to find other survivors, or even tame wild animals for their own benefit, he would have scored an S grade. Howard says he's just a regular person, not some Bear Grylls of professional survival. But the robot explains to him that the essence of any game is to obtain exciting experiences that one cannot have in real life, and that this apocalypse survival challenge he played was just a level 0 challenge for new players, like a tutorial, and that the real challenge of the game would be released within a month. Then she points to another portal labeled Frank Frankenstein invasion, where there's a freaking creepy alien and a countdown. She says the same criteria apply to all challenges, and that the intention of this game is to elevate the player's sense of justice in real-life scenarios. After all, humans are a team with a common destiny. Howard says he needs to think about whether he'll continue this game or not, because from the blurred memories he has now, he feels terrible, and it's very exhausting. So the robot, very quickly, says that it wasn't always terrible after all. He had some really happy days, especially when he was in bed, and then she displays scenes of him with Sabrina naked, in the act of love. He goes into shock at that moment, not understanding anything, and starts yelling at the robot that this is wrong, she should respect his privacy and so on. But the robot just tells him to relax because she's an emotionless artificial intelligence. She won't affect the player. He asks if Sabrina can have these memories in real life, and the robot says no. What happens in the virtual world stays in the virtual world. But at this moment, we see none other than Sabrina, the real Sabrina from the real world, waking up with tears in her eyes. The story continues with Howard saying that there's something wrong in this game. They can't be a real company. He expresses his desire to go back home. The AI responds that he just needs to rub his left eye to activate the system menu, but as he successfully completed the challenge, he's entitled to a reward. Howard tells her to send the reward to his address, but she simply ignores him and then waves her staff or whatever that thing is, and a dark mist begins to surround them. Howard is bewildered, but she tells him not to panic, as the system was deciding on the right reward for him. The protag remains in the middle of the mist, not understanding anything, until a pair of killeries appear behind him, and he remembers that he had fought against wolves. The memories of the deadly combat flash before his eyes, more vivid than ever. Then he sees someone approaching, a caveman holding a spear, who prepares and throws the spear with all his strength, killing the wolf instantly. Then Howard receives his reward, a hunting skill, precise throw. He doesn't quite understand how this skill works, but when he's about to ask the AI, he hears an alarm clock sound. It's his phone waking him up for work. So, folks, the guy spent 6 months inside a virtual reality of a post-apocalyptic world, having to hunt to survive, and when he returns, he has to go to work, as if nothing had happened. Howard realizes that the system somehow forced him awake, because he hadn't selected the option to exit the game. When he rubs his left eye to try to open the system again, nothing happens. This leaves him more confused than ever, not sure if he's dreaming or in the real world. Meanwhile, in the dream world, the artificial intelligence is also baffled and asks the other AI in the system why our protag was suddenly kicked out of the game.
Alert, alert, system failure, memory control function deactivated.
The AI doesn't understand and asks the other AI to track the error code.
Error code is 0001, loading new information.
Then we see Sabrina at the moment she's having that dream inside the game. The AI is in turmoil, trying to understand how there's a new dream within a dream. She tells the robot to find a way to fix the glitch, but it's too late. The robot even tells her that there's no possible correction in its database. The AI then asks if it's really asking her to write a correction code by herself because she's just a robotic butler and doesn't have that capability. Oh well, if it were the real ChatGPT, it would've. Then we see Sabrina at the moment she wakes up from the dream. 2 women are by her side, watching tears roll down her face. The older one asks if she's okay. Sabrina says she had a very long dream but can't remember the details, then asks what they were doing in her room. The 2 women look at each other embarrassed, and one of them says that last night she was sleepwalking, went to the kitchen, took a knife, and was murmuring something like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Sabrina immediately recognizes it as the dream. The servant says she got scared that there might be an accident, and called her secretary to come. The secretary immediately asks if Sabrina wants to take a few days off before going back to work. Still crying, Sabrina says it wasn't a dream, it was more than a dream. It was too real. The scene shifts to the city, with cars and people everywhere, honking, sirens, pollution. It was strange for Howard to return to normal life after living in a post-apocalyptic world. Someone bumps into him, a young person in a hurry, who tells him to be careful. Howard apologizes. He had become unaccustomed to the bustling life of the big city. Then he stops at the kiosk where he used to eat before going to work. The cook asks how he's doing, and he says he's okay, or at least he thinks he is. The cook then mentions that a relative of his asked him to find a partner for his daughter, a remarkable girl, and he could introduce her to Howard if he wanted. But when he finished speaking, he saw Howard doing something strange. He was warming himself by the kiosk's fire. The cook even asks if everything is okay with him, and the guy just says he's a bit cold. So the cook asks if he wants him to introduce that girl to him, but Howard says he has a girlfriend now. Then he stops to think about what he said. Even though the memories were extremely real in his mind and heart, it was just a dream, a game, and it's over now. Arriving at the company, Howard sees that it's 7:50 in the morning, and he almost ran late. It feels like it's been millions of years since he last went to work. He feels a hand on his shoulder and someone calling him. It's Donald, his partner, the guy he used to imagine when talking to the mannequin in the game. Howard says that it's been a while since they last saw each other, but Donald doesn't understand. After all, for him, they saw each other last night at that company dinner, remember guys? Howard explains that he was a bit lost at that dinner and might be hungover. Donald reminds him that things are heating up in their department. There's a rumor that some people are going to be laid off, and since he and their boss have never gotten along, he might be one of the first to get the boot. Our protag says it doesn't matter to him. He's going to quit anyway. After all, this was a big, wonderful world, and he had many choices. Why should he bow down and follow rules someone else made for him? Now he's going to the beach to sell his art and live off what nature provides. Donald is surprised by Howard's talk and even remembers him from school. He says that somehow he seems to have changed. Howard asks how so, and Donald says that normally he'd be complaining right now. And it's true. Before the game, Howard was a frustrated guy, constantly striving for the recognition of others. But now, after everything he had been through, he had grown accustomed to working hard for his own life. Then he arrives at his desk, and he's finally fully immersed in the real world again. What should he do? Our protag had spent so much time away from work that he couldn't even remember where he left off with his tasks. He starts jotting down some clients to get in touch with, but without much certainty about what he's doing. And I ask you guys, if he's going to quit anyway, why is he doing this? Well, he gives up on what he was doing and crumples up the paper. Then he simply tosses the crumpled sheet backward and into the trash can without even looking. At that moment, he realizes there really was something different about him. Howard tears another sheet of paper and this time takes some distance. He aims, and at that moment, it's as if everything around him disappears. There's only him and his target, and he can feel the exact distance and force he needs to throw. Then he throws, and there it is, a beautiful three-point shot. He's impressed. It's as if his body adjusted the angle and force automatically. Then he finally realizes this is his reward for winning the challenge. He unlocked this precise throwing skill. Howard is left baffled as to how this is possible. He thought the ability could only work within the game. So he decides to try hitting a trash can even further away, and when he throws the paper ball, it hits his boss square in the face. The boss, trying to maintain his composure, simply tells Howard to come to his office. And, my friend, our protag already knew he was in trouble. The gossip in the office begins immediately, with his colleagues speculating that he's going to be fired. One says they never liked him. Another even laughs, claiming to have heard that he's in debt. These guys are vultures. Donald, who is his only real friend there, is tense for his friend, wondering what's wrong with him today. Inside the boss's office, he tells Howard to sit down. As he does, the boss pours a cup of tea and then tells Howard that he really shouldn't have underestimated him. Howard doesn't understand what he means, but there's not much time for the boss to explain. He says that during the 2 years he worked there, he always dedicated himself a lot, but today he made a small mistake. So if he leaves today, he has the right to at least receive his last month's salary. Then the boss goes over to him and hugs him, saying that Howard owes him a big thank you for teaching him so many things in the last 2 years. And that's when our protag gets even more confused. The boss continues, saying that the company is going to create a new department that will be led by a certain Mr. Liu, and that this Mr. Liu insisted on having him on the team. So we understand why this boss is trying to suck up to our protag, even though Howard tells him he has no idea who this Mr. Liu is. The boss says that just like him, of course, Mr. Liu must have noticed his great potential, and he knew from the beginning that one day he would rise in the company. That's why he gave him more tasks than the others, so that he could learn things. Yeah, right. Howard tells him that he was thinking about quitting, and the boss says that a great opportunity has come his way. People have been saying that the average salary for the folks in this new department would be 20% higher. The scene cuts, and we see that Howard has already told his buddy Donald about this promotion. He says that in any case, he didn't know where he would go if he quit. Maybe it's even better for him to stay a little longer. Then someone appears asking why he is, that brown noser who at the company dinner could only stare at Sabrina's cleavage. He's upset because he's been sucking up to their boss forever and hasn't gotten anything so far. He asks what Howard did to get this. Before our protag can respond, the boss appears and tells the guy to shut up, giving that little cough. Then we see that he's with this Mr. Liu. He apologizes for what they just witnessed and tells Howard to accompany him to his office. Mr. Liu immediately says he can't ignore the negative vibes from their department. He is? Yes, he is. And he asks the brown noser if he's doubting his ability to select a capable employee. The guy is shocked and says, "No, of course not, Mr. Liu." The boss then scolds him harshly, says he should have taught him a lesson a long time ago, that he's always hasty and reckless, and that the position of team leader should go to someone better. So, he asks Donald, our protag's buddy, if he wants to become the new team leader. Donald immediately says yes, and that he will do a good job. Finally, the boss says Howard didn't need to work today. He should pack his things and get ready to work in the new department. Howard just agrees, but realizes the boss is only buttering him up because Mr. Liu is there. Speaking of him, he tells Howard that there will be a get-together for the folks from the new department after office hours. They will discuss how things will work and so on, and he can use the opportunity to get to know his new colleagues at the party. Then he turns to the rest of the office staff, who were obviously just keeping an eye on everything to gossip later, and tells everyone that the rumors they've been talking about that everyone from their department will be fired are false, and they don't need to worry. Everyone's job is safe. He says it's time to get back to work, and then says goodbye to everyone. Howard watches him leave, wondering why this guy was so nice to him out of the blue. After all, they had never even seen each other before. As for Mr. Liu, he gives one last look at our protag and thinks he seems like just an average employee, and wonders why Sabrina asked him to pull strings and put him in the new department. Interesting. Some time passes and we see our protag talking to his parents on the phone. His mother asks if he's coming home for the spring festival because it's been 2 years since he last visited. Howard asks how they're doing, how his father is, and she says everything is fine, telling him to please take care of himself. Howard says he's doing well at work, mentions his promotion, and says that they will soon be able to pay off the debt. His mother apologizes for putting him through so much difficulty in recent years and says they owe a lot to him. Howard says it's okay, and all of this will be over soon. And then out of nowhere, a co-worker calls our protag. She introduces herself as Sandy Dye and says she's the team leader of the marketing department, and she saw his photo on the payroll. Howard greets her, and she asks if he's going to the get-together for the new department. And by the way, family, this get-together will be at a mansion. Yes, the mansion where our protag lived during the apocalypse with Sabrina. She says that Mr. Liu likes to throw parties at his house and that they should go together. Howard agrees, realizing the fact that in the dream, he lived all this time in Mr. Liu's mansion. Sandy says he needs to know that Mr. Liu is obsessed with cleanliness, and he should be careful when he's there. Howard has a flashback of him coming home after the hunt, covered in blood and with muddy feet, making a mess on the entire floor. She advises him not to use the bathroom, and Howard remembers Sabrina scolding him for never putting the toilet seat down. Finally, she tells him not to enter any other room in the house, especially not his bedroom. And Howard remembers him and Sabrina. Well, you know what he remembers. Sandy asks what happened because he seems a bit embarrassed, and he just says he's fine. Then they both hear screams, someone shouting, "Thief!" A thief had stolen a woman's purse and taken off. Howard sees it and immediately takes Sandy's bag. She doesn't understand what's happening. He starts aiming at the guy, and she says it's too far to try to hit him, and there are important files in the bag. The thief runs toward a fence, uses his right hand to push off and jump. Then our protag activates his throwing skill. He throws the bag with all his might, and bang! He hits the leg the thief was going to use for support, causing him to fall face first to the ground. The next chapter starts with the thief being handcuffed, while Howard collects Sandy's papers from the ground. He wonders if she's mad at him for throwing her papers at the guy. But the truth is that she found it amazing. She can't believe he managed to hit the thief from that distance and even asks him to teach her. The people who were chasing the thief offer to help them gather the papers, and the woman whose bag was stolen says it's the least they can do. As they collect the items, Howard finds a card from a company called Aguile Capital and asks if this card was among the files. Sandy confirms that it was, and this company is an important business partner of theirs. The owner, a certain Mr. Lawrence, is the head of one of the world's top 100 companies. Howard thinks that name sounds familiar. Then Sandy says there's a rumor that their company's Mrs. Luo is dating this guy, and they're going on a cruise together. Then Howard remembers. Howard is the guy Sabrina mentioned in the dream. He gets up and tells her to hurry so they won't be late for the social. While telling himself to stop thinking about it, it was just a game. Arriving at the mansion, Sandy says the social will take place in the backyard of the mansion. She begins to give him directions to get there, but when she realizes he's already going in, she doesn't care. He knows this place better than anyone, so he takes the lead and they arrive at the social. Sandy is impressed, saying he found the place easily as if he were in his own home, but the protagonist doesn't respond. He only has eyes for one thing: her. Sabrina was before him, looking beautiful in a magnificent dress. Mr. Liu tells everyone to make themselves comfortable, and that now that everyone from the department had arrived, they would begin the meeting. Sandy, by now quite interested in getting to know our protag better, puts her arm around him and tells them to sit together. Sabrina watched from a distance. She didn't seem to like what she saw. Then Mr. Liu starts talking about their company's plan for the online business of the network of stores and blah 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 boring business stuff. Howard asks if Mrs. Luo also works in the marketing department, and Sandy says yes. In fact, it was established under her leadership because she is more than an executive. Her father is the company's president. She was much more powerful than Mr. Liu. Howard pretends to be impressed and then asks about Mr. Liu, whether she thinks he's too young to be the company's vice president. Sandy says that he grew up with Sabrina. They've been very close since they were children, and everyone sort of thought they would make a top couple. Howard asks how Mrs. Luo ended up with this guy Lawrence, but Sandy says that the rich have their own lifestyle and that she would like to live like that too. He wishes her luck while thinking it's better to leave what happened in the dream to the imagination. He already had his own problems, like a family debt of almost $1 million to pay. Sabrina and he had no chance of being together. Some time passes, and Mr. Liu finally says the meeting is over and it's time to start the fun.
1, 2, 3, sentado, 4, 6, 7, sentado, 7.
Sandy, who was having wine with our protagonist, comments that she really likes the music and that the wealthy have very good taste. Mr. Liu says the last time he danced with Sabrina, they were teenagers, and he asks her if she would do him the honor, and she accepts immediately, while Howard observes with a hint of jealousy. A waiter arrives with the most expensive picanha, and Sandy says that a steak like that must cost almost a month's salary for her. Howard asks how a piece of meat can be so expensive. She says he sounds like a country bumpkin, saying that and that he should forget about poverty today and just enjoy a party at the rich people's house. Howard says she's right. He's going to enjoy the evening. So he proposes that they toast their wine glasses. But as soon as he says that, he looks at Sabrina, and at that moment, a memory from the dream comes to him, with both of them talking about a wine he found in the mansion's cellar that was actually fake. Howard says he chose it for a special moment, and Sabrina says it's fine. The taste was perfectly sweet to her. Then we see the real-life Sabrina watching Howard drink the same wine, but with someone else. Man, what a mess. Some time at the party passes. Our protagonist sees people gossiping about how Sabrina and this Mr. Liu are a match made in heaven. Since they were kids, through high school and so on, they always sat together. They were meant for each other. Howard thinks this guy seems trustworthy, and Sabrina will have a happy life with him, and maybe that's the best for everyone. He's so lost in these thoughts that he puts his hands over the meat steam without even realizing it, until he notices his hands are burning. Sandy tells him he's an idiot since the waiter had just placed the food there. She says she will help him. She rinses his hand with water, genuinely concerned about the burn. He thanks her, feeling a bit embarrassed, and that's enough for everyone at the party to start assuming they're a couple, including Sabrina, who watches all of this with a sad expression. Mr. Liu notices, but before he can say anything, 3 guys show up at the party out of nowhere. The one in the middle says he heard that Sabrina was going to accept a job in the marketing department, so he came to congratulate her. He didn't expect to find people having a party, let alone see Mr. Lawrence's fiancée dancing with another man. Our protagonist watches this and asks who the guy is. Sandy answers that his name is Hans, and he works at Aguila Capital as a general manager, and that Lawrence really likes him. In other words, he's the boss's henchman. Mr. Liu tells the henchman it's just a dance. There's no need to overthink it. After all, isn't it normal for people to dance at parties? Sabrina elegantly says she appreciates his presence, but that it was an internal company meeting. The guy doesn't hear a single word she said and keeps staring at her cleavage. She goes on to say he's more than welcome to come to her office tomorrow to talk business, but now it might be time to leave. The henchman tells her not to rush. It was just a misunderstanding. He says he had nothing better to do to, so he decided to join the party. He mentions that he's a good dancer and asks Sabrina if she'd like to dance with him. The gay friend instantly steps in to defend her, saying he and Sabrina are old friends, but that it's extremely inappropriate to invite her to dance like that. These guys are masters at telling someone off with elegance. The henchman says it's just a dance. It's not like he's overthinking it. I lost in the argument there. Sabrina touches Mr. Liu's shoulder and says the henchman, Hans, is a business partner of theirs, so they should be kind. The guy is all smiles, and she reluctantly shakes his hand. Everyone at the party had stopped to watch the scene, but the henchman didn't care at all. He even said from now on, he would be responsible for picking her up and taking her to Lawrence whenever she wanted to see him. Sabrina simply thanks him. The guy says the pleasure is his, pulling her closer. Sabrina senses the guy's malice and tells him not to do it anymore. He says he won't do it anymore, but internally he's calling her a bitch and telling her to stop pretending. Okay, folks, we have someone to hate. Sandy says Mr. Liu must be furious, but there's nothing he can do. After all, their company relies heavily on this business partnership with Lawrence's company. The protagonist just watches in silence, the henchman dancing with Sabrina, his wandering hand going lower and lower, until Sabrina grabs him by the arm and tells him he's not much of a dancer and that they're done for today. The guy says he's just a bit rusty. Sandy says Mr. Liu is behaving like a coward for not doing anything and tells Howard to stop just watching, but he doesn't even listen to her. The protagonist is simply furious, and his hand holding the wine glass is trembling. In his thoughts, the henchman calls Sabrina a bitch, asks himself how she dares to embarrass him in front of everyone, and decides to teach her a lesson. So he steps on her dress and pushes the woman backward. Her dress starts to tear, and she'd end up naked in front of everyone. But Howard, who watched everything without saying a word, decides to act, and activated his special ability. So, my friends, a scorching hot piece of meat flies through the air to land right in the asshole henchman's eyes, and he screams in pain. This makes him release Sabrina's dress, which falls to the ground, but at least she's not naked. At this point, the music stops, and everyone stands up. The henchman, who was now furious, tells everyone not to move and orders his henchmen to find the person who threw that meat in his face. Howard shows no sign of concern, not even when the guy's minion approaches their table. But this was also thanks to Sandy, who quickly realized that the protagonist was in trouble and gave him half of her meat. Quick thinking, huh? She thinks to herself that Howard threw a piece of meat in the guy's face when not even Mr. Liu had the guts to do anything. He really has balls. The minions say they found nothing, but the guy gets pissed because a piece of meat couldn't have just appeared out of thin air and hit him on the head. But as he was about to order the minions to continue looking, someone slapped him hard in the face. It was none other than Sabrina. Her slap was so powerful that it made the guy fall to the ground. She tells him to get his minions and get out of there once and for all because she can't stand to look at him. At this point, the people at the party, which had turned into a circus by this time, were left in awe of her attitude. Even Howard was impressed and thankful he never received a slap like that in the dream. The henchman stands up pissed off, and Sabrina says that being nice was courtesy, but it doesn't mean he could do whatever he wanted. The gay friend adds that that's right. Who does he think he is? Moreover, if he didn't leave, they would call the police. The henchman was about to say something, but one of the minions calls him and whispers something in his ear. Suddenly, the guy calms down and says there was no need for all of this. He just came to say hi but was already leaving. No one understood exactly what happened, but Sabrina tells them to let it go, and she would go change. Some time passes, and we see Sandy knocking back one bottle of wine after another, until Howard asks her if she doesn't think it's enough already. She says it's all good and that he should drink with her, but he says he's not much of a drinker. The woman sees he's playing hard to get and decides to step up her game. She says drinking alone isn't fun and suggests that for every 3 glasses she drinks, he has to drink 1. And Howard, not wanting to be impolite to the woman, agrees. Some time passes, and guess what? The woman was plastered. She'd even passed out. Howard tries to ask her where she lives, but she can't even talk, until suddenly she jumps on the table and starts babbling a bunch of nonsense. Sandy is completely wasted. Then she stumbles, and the protagonist realizes she's going to fall, and she falls, but with her in his face. The woman climbed on top of the guy on the party table in front of everyone. She starts licking his face, running her hand inside his shirt, and even rubbing Yikes. The waiter arrives utterly embarrassed and says he didn't want to interrupt, but unfortunately, they're closing. He then hands them the bill, which shocks Howard instantly. 1 pork rib, 1 shrimp, and 1 lamb cost over $400, man. That's crazy. Later in the night, Sandy was obviously going to need a ride home, but in this case, it was to the protagonist's house. She asks him where he's taking her, and he says it's his house, and he should spend the night there because he couldn't put her in an Uber in that state all alone. She calls him a smooth talker because they met for the first time that day, and he's already taking her to spend the night at his house. But as they talked, a strange figure watched in silence, standing in the dark. Howard throws the young woman on the bed, and she asks him to hug her. He backs away and tells her to go to sleep. He thinks that he hasn't even started in the new department, and he's already going to be the center of gossip again. Sandy is feeling everything spinning, but she still somehow wants to be with our protagonist and decides she needs to do something before she passes out completely. So she starts to get up. Howard asks her what she wants, and the woman just goes for it with everything she's got. She throws herself on him, and they fall to the ground. She's with an expression of then starts undressing. Howard grabs her hand and says this is going to be a disaster. She says she knows he also feels and starts taking off his belt while getting very close to his ear, telling him not to be afraid because he can... Howard tells himself that this situation is irresistible for any normal young man. His little man was about to burst out of his underwear, and when he thought he couldn't hold back any longer, she stops. Then he realizes that she's passed out. She's gone, but not before belching the stinkiest burp right in his face, making him recoil instantly. At least he's now sober. He puts her back in bed and covers her. He realizes it's already 2 in the morning and decides to try to get some sleep on the couch. So that's it, folks. Never take advantage of a drunk person, especially a woman. Respect points to our protagonist. Good night, and all seemed quiet until we heard the sound of the door opening. Howard, who was lying in the living room, heard it too. He realizes there's a strange guy inside his apartment and immediately gets up. The guy is standing there, looking at Sandy while she's asleep, with a creepy expression, saying she's wonderful. Man, what the hell is this? Howard appears and asks what the hell he's doing there and how the fuck he got into the apartment. The guy simply tells him to speak softly and says that he's already had enough fun with her, and asks why he doesn't let him have her just this once. Man, seriously. Howard can't believe what he heard and immediately grabs the guy by the neck, telling him to get out of there. But the guy manages to spin and throw him hard to the ground, then says he's too stubborn. They could have had a peaceful conversation. While taking off Sandy's panties, he says that if Howard lets him do whatever he wants with the woman, he'll owe him one. He says he can give him money when he gets rich and that he hasn't touched a woman in 20 years. Then, with her panties in his hands, he asks if Howard understands him, since they're both men, and then throws the panties in Howard's face. Man, honestly, even I want to punch this guy in the face. Howard, who by now was consumed by rage, calls the guy sick, and then grabs a chair and goes after the guy with all his might. But the bastard manages to defend himself, and the chair simply shatters into several pieces. The guy continues trying to negotiate the woman with Howard, saying that everyone would die for a favor from him. The protag, realizing that he can't beat the guy in a fight, decides to call the police right away, but then the guy chickens out and says there's no need for that. Howard asks if he's kidding. The guy simply invaded his house and tried to assault his colleague. Does he think he's going to get what? Applause? He should go to hell. Then the guy goes after Howard to try to stop him from calling the police, saying he misunderstood everything. He says he thought the woman was an escort, that she had come to do a job for him, and that it's not normal for people to sleep together on the first date. Howard asks what the hell he's talking about, and the guy starts to say that he's been away for the past few years and no longer has any idea what people do on first dates now. Oh man, for the love of God, please, someone punch this guy in the face. Howard asks what kind of excuse that is and why the guy was waiting at his door, spying on his apartment. Then the guy says that this apartment was his 20 years ago and that he had come back to retrieve the things he hid there. He goes to a corner of the apartment and lifts a loose board, and there really was a box there. He opens the box, and it's filled with jewelry, rings, and gold chains. Then he explains that 20 years ago, this apartment was full of prostitutes, and he took great risks to obtain these things. Howard says that it doesn't matter what kind of crap he did in his past, and that he even attempted to assault his friend. The guy says it was a misunderstanding, and anyway, he hadn't caused any real harm to her. Then he says that he, Josh Ty, is not a good person, but he's not an intimidator either. He follows his own rules. He tells Howard to help his friend get dressed as he's leaving. Howard says he still thinks it's better to call the police on him, so the guy starts getting annoyed, asking if the protag really thinks he can stop him, and he says the woman could simply say that it was him who tried to assault her. Then he hands our protag a box and tells him to forget what happened. Howard asks if he's trying to bribe him. The guy says he seems like an upright guy, and that it's just an iron ring that isn't worth much but is unique. Then he says that ever since the day he got that ring, he kept dreaming of the same woman, a woman in a red coat holding a golden scepter, and her eyes glowed with a blue light. Howard immediately realizes that the AI from the dream fits the description perfectly. The guy goes on to say that he couldn't understand a word she was saying, found the woman hot, and even tried to flirt with her, but she wanted nothing to do with him and even beat him up. So he could do whatever he wanted with this ring, like, I don't know, sell it to someone who enjoys getting beaten or something. Howard tells him to wait because that's bribery, but the guy doesn't want to hear it and just leaves. Howard wonders if this box has anything to do with the world of dreams. When he opens it, he sees an iron ring with a red gem that emits strange lights, and then his left eye begins to activate a visual system again, and in front of him, a hologram is formed. It's a hologram of a woman who claims to be the developer of the dream system. She says that under immense pressure, this was the only way to leave this message, and she hopes it can help the target of the tests. She goes on to say that he fell into a trap. The dream system could blur the boundaries of social levels, law, and moral standards in reality. The user can hardly notice that their mindset is changing. When the user returns to real life, a huge gap between dream and reality will unleash greed, violence, and dark thoughts from their soul. The developers seem to enjoy messing with people's lives, and she couldn't persuade them to improve the system. The woman continues, saying she hopes he can stay alert to his changes so he won't succumb to the impulses of life. She mentions that she left some communication devices in each dream challenge, and they can help him get rid of the system and all the trouble. Finally, she tells him to meet her, and then she disappears. Howard tells himself that this woman is just like I-63, and as long as he feels normal, he won't commit any crimes. He's actually managing to control his impulses. Howard finds it strange how that strange guy saw IA-63 2 decades ago and wonders about the real importance of that ring. But something interrupts his thoughts. It was the alarm clock, saying it was already 7 in the morning, time to go to work. Sandy also wakes up to the alarm clock, and when she realizes she's without panties, she screams as loud as she can. The day truly begins, and now Howard and Sandy are a couple. The guy at the street vendor even tells the protag that it's no wonder he turned down his offer to find a girl. After all, he already had a crush. He says they make a cute couple, and breakfast today is on the house. This guy is really nice. Sandy is happy to know that Howard had a crush on her before, and she says she should have noticed, while Howard is just wondering why this is happening to him. Haha. Arriving at the company building, gossip obviously runs wild. People are talking about how the old team leader used to pursue Sandy, and she blew him off to be with Howard. The old team leader is that brown noser, and this guy is more furious than ever because Howard not only stole the promotion he wanted, but also the woman he had a crush on. Meanwhile, the two of them were truly living like a couple. Sandy was even making plans for them to go to the movies tonight, and Howard was thinking about how to tell her that he didn't even have money to go to the cinema. He'd probably have to borrow some cash from Donald. Sandy mentions that it would be a good idea to stop by a pharmacy to buy the morning after pill, and as soon as she says that, guess who shows up? The one and only, Sabrina. She greets the two and says that she can see they've made great progress in their relationship. Sandy regrets her behavior at the social event and says she's embarrassed. Then Sabrina throws a hint at Howard, saying she thought he would take things slowly, but he certainly surprised her. Howard just stays silent, not saying anything. Sandy says she thought the same, that he seemed like a reserved gentleman until last night when she let her guard down, and he just went for it. Howard is extremely embarrassed and says she doesn't need to go into details, but it's already in the past. Sabrina, on the inside, felt a mix of emotions she couldn't describe, but on the outside, she simply says that she's happy for them and hopes they can maintain a professional demeanor in the office. Then she leaves the elevator, leaving an awkward atmosphere. Sandy says that Sabrina has no right to say that to her, especially considering she's involved with 2 different men. But Howard says she's right. As long as they're here, it's better to focus on their work. Sandy gets upset and says she's his waifu now, and he has to support her unconditionally unless their relationship was just a fling, and he never thought about having a family with her. This touches our protag's weak spot, folks. When you mention family, he immediately softens, so he says she's right, and he should prioritize their relationship above all else. She hugs him and says, "That's right, puppy. I'm not kidding. She actually said that." Then she tells him to go to work, and she'll be waiting downstairs at the end of the day. She takes his hand and leads it to her butt while saying, Meanwhile, we see Mr. Liu telling Sabrina that she's pushing herself too hard and that she shouldn't be too busy even to have lunch. She says she's not hungry and has a lot to do in the new department. He says they've been friends for many years and he knows when she's lying, and in reality, she's anxious. Then he taps her desk, looks her in the eyes, and asks if it's because of Howard. Sabrina hesitates for a moment and then says she doesn't know what he's talking about. At that moment, who should arrive but Howard himself, telling Mr. Liu that he's finished the list he asked for. Mr. Liu thanks him and asks him to come over and show it to them, which makes Sabrina even more anxious. He compliments Howard's work, saying it's well done and concise, but Howard isn't paying much attention because he's standing in front of Sabrina. They both feel like they have a lot to say to each other, but at the same time, it's like there's a giant barrier between them. Liu asks why Howard's looking down, if there's something on his mind. Howard tries to divert the conversation and says he was just looking at the plant in the vase, but when he takes a closer look and realizes what plant it is, his heart starts beating faster. It's a tomato plant. Sabrina's heart also races, and they finally lock eyes. Sabrina says he seems to know a lot about tomatoes, and he says yes, he knows them very well. And it's true. When they were in the post-apocalyptic world, Sabrina used to grow tomatoes. He remembers it very well. He remembers the day when they only had one tomato and a cabbage leaf to eat. He will never forget that. Sabrina asks if he recognizes these plants from anywhere, and he says yes. He wants to tell her everything, all the memories, express what he feels for her. His heart beats stronger than ever. Then he remembers the boss talking about people who try to bite off more than they can chew. He remembers the AI saying it was just a game, and now it's over. He remembers the game creator saying he couldn't be manipulated by his impulses. He remembers Sandy and the relationship they have now. But above all, he remembers her face on a snowy day, her smile. Howard trembles, and when he finally gathers the courage to say something, he mentions that he once saw a tomato plant in his hometown. Even Mr. Liu commented that after all this tension, he expected some shocking secret behind this tomato plant. Howard deflects, saying that tomatoes have no secrets. He pretends to believe it and then asks Sabrina and her why she would have a tomato plant in her office. She gets tense for a moment, then responds that she must have planted the wrong seeds and she'll have the plant in the pot replaced tomorrow. Oh man, that one hurt. Liu asks if that's all, and she says yes, and Howard is left disappointed. Sometime later, he went to the bathroom to wash his face, telling himself that he narrowly avoided something. The real Sabrina is not the same as the Sabrina in the dream, but he still doesn't understand why he can't stop thinking about her. Then we see Sabrina in her office, thanking her lucky stars that she managed to keep her composure. Otherwise, that situation would have been very embarrassing. Howard tells himself that the game developer is right. He was almost falling into the game's trap and only just realized it. In the game, he got used to using weapons and killing. If he continued down that path, what kind of man would he have become? He's just a humble employee, and she is the daughter of the company's president. Nothing will happen between them. Sabrina thinks about how that dream felt so real, how she and that man lived together for 180 days, went through many difficult things, but now it was time to forget about it. Both of them, at the same time, decide to put an end to it. The dream is over, and from now on, they are no longer involved. The workday comes to an end, and our protagonist asked his buddy Donald for some help through messaging because he was going out with his waifu. Donald, who is a really nice guy, sends the money via a mobile payment system and says that if he needs more, he can charge it to his credit card. Howard says it's all good and that he'll pay him back when he gets his salary. Then he goes to meet Sandy, but when he finds her, she's talking to the sycophantic guy. The guy says he's worried that she might be deceived, and she says she doesn't need him to tell her that. Howard intervenes and asks if he tried to hurt her. She says no, and the sycophantic guy mentions that, unlike some people, he's honest and harmless, and he was just telling Sandy to stay away from hypocrites. But anyway, he had already said what he wanted, so he was leaving. Howard says that this guy has always been unpleasant and tells Sandy to just ignore him. Then he asks if she wants to go see that movie in the cinema. She simply says she wants to break up, lets go of his hand, takes a step to the side, and says once again that she wants to break up, this time more clearly. Howard doesn't say anything. She says that, to be honest, they don't know much about each other, so she asks Howard how much his family's debt is. He takes a deep breath and says, 200,000. The woman is almost in shock and thinks that 200,000 is a lot for an office worker who earns just a few thousand per month. So, she asks him to leave her out of it. She's not from a wealthy family and is not as capable as he thinks she is. And deep down, she knows he's not really interested in her. She just hates the fact that Sabrina attracts the attention of all the nice guys. One thing leads to another, and then it happened, but she doesn't deserve him. So she asks asks him to forget about last night and leaves. And that's how, my friends, our protagonist lost 2 women in a single day. Arriving home, he thinks to himself that it's not the first time he's been abandoned by a girl. When he was in college, his first love left him for the same reason. This debt has made life miserable for his whole family, and he's even afraid to look at their sad faces. Howard has thought about starting his own business, but he has never found a project that excited him. He couldn't take it anymore. He needed to do something. When he arrives home, he notices the stove is on and wonders if he forgot something on the stove when he left home. However, that strange guy is sitting on his sofa. He simply says hello in a casual manner, but Howard wants none of it. He confronts the guy in a rage, calling him a scoundrel and asking what he's doing there. He shouts at the guy, saying he tried to assault his colleague and now he's using his cooking pot. What does he think this place is? His house? The guy says he has nowhere else to go and that he got beaten up today trying to find a job. He asks if he could have the mercy to let him stay there for a few days. Brother, Howard kicks the guy out, saying this is his last warning, and if he dares to do this again, he'll call the police. Then he thinks to himself that this is the worst day ever. He smells the food the guy was cooking and goes to see what he was preparing. When he opens the lid, he wonders what the heck it is, if he calls that food, because it looks more like he was trying to poison someone. Then some time passes, and Howard opens his door. With a strange look, he invites the guy inside, then says that the thing he was cooking is amazing. He asks if the guy is a Michelin chef or something, and if he knows how to cook anything else. The guy says he knows a bit about cooking. Howard says he's a great cook and could get a job at any restaurant, then asks why he got beaten up. The guy asks if he doesn't see it. He's an ex-convict. He doesn't know how to use a smartphone or even write a resume. He just wants to live a trouble-free life like everyone else. But it's difficult. Poor thing. He's a victim of society. Howard then asks if he's interested in running a restaurant with him. The guy thinks for a moment and says that as long as he doesn't mind his criminal record, they can talk business. Howard says it's okay. He won't inquire about the guy's past, and he'll find a place for them to start their restaurant. The guy asks if he doesn't think they're moving too fast, because those who check his criminal record get scared. He asks if Howard is sure he has the courage to work with him. Howard thinks for a while and then says he's tired of feeling like a sewer rat when he talks about his family with others, and that this could be a good shot. For a man to have meat, he first needs to deal with the wolf, and for the wolf to have meat, it can't attack the man. He stops in front of the guy, looks into his eyes and says he's willing to take the risk as long as it's worth it. Then he reaches out to the guy, who thought he wanted to shake hands, but in reality, he wanted the jewels the guy had hidden in the apartment to sell and rent a place. The guy then says he spent everything on hookers, Paraguayan cigarettes, and 51, and Howard can't believe it. His idea of the restaurant didn't seem to have much of a future. Until sometime later, his phone rings. He answers, and hears Sandy's voice. She tells him she feels bad about the things she said to him, and doesn't want him to think she's a gold digger who's only with someone for their money. He tells her to cut the small talk and get to the point. She says she wants to help him, that she's found a way to make quick money, and asks if he's interested. Without even thinking twice, he responds, yes. We see our dear Mr. Liu facing Sabrina. He tells her that the guy, Howard Chen, is an excellent employee. He completed a whole week's worth of work in just one day, and he did it very well. Liu admits he was wrong. He thought she was having an affair with Howard, but in reality, she was just trying to bring an excellent employee to the department. She has a great taste in choosing employees. Sabrina finds it amusing that he's talking about having an affair because he's no saint. She has told him several times to replace his secretary. Speaking of her, the secretary appears, letting Mr. Liu know that the driver was waiting for him. But wait a minute, wasn't Mr. Liu? Sabrina looks at the woman, and memories flood her mind. Memories of the day her father forced her to witness this same woman in the act with another employee. She definitely wasn't a nun. Liu reminds Sabrina that they made an agreement not to talk about each other's private lives. Sabrina just calls him an idiot. Speaking of idiots, our protagonist hadn't even started, but he was already regretting accepting Sandy's offer. And what was the offer? Well, she and two friends do live streams on the Purple site, kind of hardcore streams, wearing strange clothes and doing things that people don't normally do to get attention. And no, it's not anything +18, 18, just strange things. And Sandy's invitation is for him to participate in the next live stream. Howard asks if he has to dress like them, and Sandy says yes, and since she saw that he's good at throwing things, the challenge they've prepared for him is to throw darts. They mention they already have 200,000 followers, and he can keep half of the money they make in this live stream. Howard, desperate to make money and finally get rid of his family's damn debt, accepts it. Well, what can he do? The woman in green using the nickname Flatty asks why Sandy called this guy. After all, their live stream is booming with hardcore stuff. What's the fun in throwing darts at a target? And Sandy replies that it doesn't hurt to try something different. But the other woman, dressed in red and using the nickname Chubby, says it's a problem indeed. No pain, no gain. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the world, and they should do something more exciting because this guy there doesn't know anything and doesn't seem to have any fun. Our protagonist, who was just listening, thinks to himself, oh really, let's see then. So a while later, he appears, and the three women observe the scene. Howard is wearing tight pants and a leather belt as a vest. Man, what happened to our protagonist? This is the same guy who in part 3 was fighting hand-to-hand with killer wolves. The woman in green says it's great, that's exactly what they wanted, but asks why he put on that mask. Another woman answers for Howard, saying it's very embarrassing. He doesn't want people to know who he is. Sandy says that while he was getting dressed, they talked and decided to add a small change to the challenge. Chubby says no one cares if he can hit a target or not. What people really want to see is him getting electric shocks and writhing like a hedgehog. Sandy tells him not to worry. She'll adjust the electric current to make it okay, and Howard just tells them to start already. And then they start the live stream. The two women do the introduction and such, then announce a new challenge today. Darts connected to an electrified mesh. They covered the floor with a dangerous electric mesh, and if the darts don't hit the center of the target, they will give an electric shock to the shooter, just like that. Then they demonstrate how strong the electric shock can be using meat, and man, the meat roasts instantly. These women are crazy. Chubby says to welcome the brave shooter, Slanty. The comments start pouring in. Some express pity for him, others tell him to be careful, and some are super excited. They say he will have 10 darts to throw, and they tell the over 50,000 people watching to leave a like and slide that sub to support the shooter. And come on, family, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, soon I'll have to wear one of those outfits too. Sandy is a bit worried about Howard. After all, they kind of roasted a piece of meat with the shock. She's about to lower the electric current when Chubby grabs her arm and asks if she's crazy. They're not the type of irresponsible content creators who lie to their audience. Sandy says that Howard could really get hurt with this, and Chubby says so what? People earn their daily bread by risking their lives. No pain, no gain. She asks if Sandy thinks their followers don't work hard too. The chat starts cheering for her. Then she turns to Howard and tells him that they let him participate, so he needs to work hard to prove himself. If he thinks it's going to be easy just because it's the internet, he should forget about it and leave right away. Howard doesn't say anything. He simply throws the first dart without much ceremony, and guess what? He hits the bullseye, right on target. He asks if that's enough. The woman can't believe it, says he's good, but she wants more excitement. She says that Slanty is very confident, so now he's going to throw from an even greater distance. Sandy says it's dangerous, but Chubby tells her to shut up. After all, Slanty himself didn't say anything. And indeed, our dear Slanty simply throws the dart, and of course hits the target again. Chubby admits he's amazing. While she talks, he walks backward and throws the next darts. The number of live viewers starts increasing like crazy thanks to the skill of our dear Slanty. I mean, Howard, he keeps throwing more and more darts, throws the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, always taking a step back after each one and hitting all perfectly on target. By this point, they've made it to the trending topics. Howard has reached the door, there's no more room to go back, and the chat is going crazy, calling him the Dart God. Then he releases the remaining darts. Chubby asks him why he stopped. Howard says that before the live started, everyone there expected him to miss and get shocked to entertain the audience, and he wasn't going to do that just to please people. He doesn't enjoy that kind of thing. If they wanted, they could consider those darts he dropped as mistakes. He doesn't understand what's fun about watching someone screw up, and he really wasn't made for this. His show was over. This was his last live. He says goodbye and leaves, abandoning a live with over 1.8 million people watching. The women are there not knowing what to do, seeing that the live views were dropping drastically, and Chubby apologizes, acknowledging that she went too far. Well, some time passes, the next day arrives, and Howard wakes up to a call. It was Sandy saying that he had gone viral. The protagonist is a bit confused, but then he sees that people were even making memes with his images. He goes to have breakfast before heading to work when he sees that the strange guy had made some weird dishes with weird names. The guy says it's his favorite breakfast recipe and he's still adjusting. Howard says he'll call him Ty and tells Ty that his dishes seem like crap, and the names he gave them are crap too. He says the guy doesn't need to hurry because they're not opening the restaurant at that moment. Ty says he thought they were going to open in a few days and start making money. Howard says he's working on it but can't say exactly when they'll open. Anyway, he can stay at his house. So, our protagonist invited the guy who broke into his house and tried to assault his friend to live comfortably in his house. In what world does this exist? I don't know. Comment below what you think about it. Well, Howard tells the guy that there's food and space for him there, better than being on the street. We have a new Jesus Christ, my brothers. Arriving at the company, the E-girls were waiting for Howard, probably to beg him to continue doing live streams with them. He avoids them and says he's running late for work and will meet them later. In the office, a colleague tells Howard that Mr. Liu wants to talk to him. He says he's going and then asks what the guys are watching. The other colleague says it's a new internet celebrity and shows him the phone. And guess what? The guys were watching Howard and the flood of memes made about him. The colleague says this guy is sensational and tells Howard that he hit 7 darts in a row on target, and now everyone calls him Brother 7. Howard feels like burying his face in a hole. Arriving at Mr. Liu's office, Howard calls him, and he was already waiting for him, if you catch my drift. Then he says he knows that last night he and Sandy had gone to participate in the live stream with those e-girls, but for some reason, Howard didn't appear on the live, only that Brother 7 guy. He says Brother 7 is a very charming guy, and he says that literally licking his lips, so it's confirmed he is. Liu asks if Howard has his contact because he wants to manage him, and Howard says no, and he thought his outfit was awful. Liu says he knows nothing about fashion, and in the comments, everyone is praising this Brother 7. Everyone admires him. Howard asks why, and Liu says it's because he's cool, indifferent, has that Sigma aura, seems like a man of dignity. Liu says Howard needs to get in touch with this guy because they can make a lot of money with it. Howard says this is a bit beyond his duties. He's not paid for this. Liu says very well. He'll give him this opportunity to prove that he could be a good assistant. If he can get Brother 7's contact, he'll give our protagonist a promotion, meaning a salary increase and the chance to meet many important people. So Howard says the given mission is a mission accomplished, but deep down, he thinks there's no other way. After all, he needed money. Some time passes, and we see the two e-girls looking a bit sad because Howard apparently agreed to meet them there but hadn't shown up. Then Sandy appears, bringing Howard. The moment the e-girls see him, Chubby runs up to him, grabs him by the tie, and starts pouring it all out. She says she didn't want to make anyone a fool, but people didn't watch the fitness videos she made, so she started making videos of herself eating, up to the point where she became ugly. And from then on, she had to resort to more and more dramatic things, and that's the only way she can pay her bills. But what Howard said before leaving the live stream intrigued her. When she started her streaming career, her intention was to share wisdom with people, and she doesn't know how she ended up in the situation she's in now. She's almost at the point of opening an OnlyFans. She clasps her hands, pleading with him, emotionally saying she doesn't want to hurt anymore, doesn't want people to laugh at her anymore. She wants to make money in a decent way. Howard shakes her hand immediately and says, okay, let's do this, which makes the three e-girls very happy. A month passes, my friends, and finally, we see the system screen again, announcing that the next dream would begin the next day. Finally, Howard thinks to himself that the game doesn't even excite him anymore. What he wants to do now is put on his tight clothes and be Brother 7. Man, what did they do to our protagonist? He asks the audience if anyone is hungry, and a guy raises his hand saying, me. Then our waifu appears, saying she brought a little cake to satisfy his hunger, which makes the fans fall in love. Then bang, a cake hits the chubby guy's face. It was Brother 7, asking if it tastes good. The guy doesn't say anything until he screams yes, and the whole audience starts screaming along, Brother 7, Brother 7. Sabrina, who watches everything bored, wonders how it's possible for people to like this, and in this case, I'm also wondering the same thing. Mr. Liu tells her to simply enjoy these experiences and to look around at how everyone is excited. They are going to make a lot of money. From the stage, Chubby says that to start, they would throw the red wedding cloak, and whoever catches it will be Brother 7's husband or wife. The audience screams with excitement. Wait, didn't this woman just say she wanted to make money in a dignified way? Anyway, Mr. Liu goes crazy because he wants Brother 7's naked body more than anyone. But the red wedding cloak lands on none other than Sabrina's face. She is left bewildered, but the people around her don't give her a chance, and a fight begins to see who will be Brother 7's waifu, and apparently, Liu wins the fight. The event ends, and we see them talking. Liu says that Howard Chen is very annoying because he said he was going to the bathroom at the beginning of the event, plant and had disappeared until now. Who would have thought? We have a Peter Parker here. Brother 7 says everything is fine. Howard told him everything and he threw the towel to say hi. Liu says he got the message, but Brother 7 said to be honest. He is Sigma and doesn't want to get involved with anyone, much less represent a company. So if they want him to promote any of their products, he will charge a high price. Sabrina said he's being unreasonable, but before they could continue the conversation, someone appears, telling Mr. Liu that he shouldn't have underestimated him. It's Lawrence's henchman. He arrives smoking a little cigarette and tells Brother 7 that he chose the wrong company because his company is much better and blah blah blah. Brother 7, says he won't work for his company either, but the guy tells him not to rush and that he will offer 5 times more than Mr. Liu's offer. Sabrina is already disappointed because this is very Lawrence's style, but Brother 7 says he won't accept his offer, and the reason has nothing to do with money. The guy asks what it is then, and the main character says it's no big deal, he just hates him. This makes the guy uncomfortable and causes the other two listening to the conversation to hold back laughter. Then, Brother 7 turns around and says goodbye, while the guy gets angry, saying that he will regret this. Mr. Liu asks Sabrina if she now finds him likable, and she says that indeed, he seems to be a better person than she thought. Arriving home, Howard shows a credit card, and the strange guy is impressed with how he managed to save so much money so quickly, but he says they will have to pay 3 installments of the restaurant rent at once, and for that, they will need a large sum of money. So Howard pulls out another card and says this one will do. He explains that when he was 1-year-old, his parents put $100 on this card. When he turned 2, they added another $100, and as the years passed, they kept adding more. Even though they have a huge debt, his parents always insisted on putting whatever they could on this card until he turned 18. Then they handed the card to him and told him to go live his own life, and they would support him no matter what. The money they saved means a lot to Howard, just like the decision to run a restaurant. So he asks if the guy is ready. The guy gets tense and seems to reflect, until he says for them to give up on this. Howard is surprised, not understanding anything, and asks why. The guy says it's too late, he got another job and his parents worked so hard for it he should keep that money. The scene cuts to the suck-up showing Lawrence's henchman photos proving that Brother 7 is actually Howard Chen, who is also the same person who slapped meat on his face at their gathering. Apparently, the suck-up took photos of our protagonist in secret. The henchman with slicked back hair asks his minion if he has the contact of that brutal fighter friend of his who recently got out of prison, and the minion says yes, they had met recently. He said he gave some money to the guy, who was desperately in need, so he was available to do tasks for them in exchange. Then the slick-haired henchman looks again at the photo, proving that our protagonist is the famous Brother 7, and with a sinister look, he says it's time for them to settle the score. And so the manhwa chapter ends. The next chapter begins with water and blood. Howard in a robe sinks to the bottom of what seems to be a pool, with blood gushing from his throat. He wonders if he's going to die, and when everything starts to turn white, we go back 15 hours ago. Someone called his name, waking him up. It was Liu calling him. Howard apologizes and says that just now, a woman had knocked on his door looking for someone. Liu asks who, and he says the woman was looking for his roommate who had moved in last night. Liu asks if it's serious that he still lives with a roommate. It's about time to find a better place, especially now that he's going to start getting a good salary. He could look for a place closer to the company. Howard asks if getting a salary increase means he passed his test, and Liu says, of course he did. He managed to arrange a meeting with Brother 7, even though Brother 7 refused to work for them. It was a pleasure to see him put down Lawrence's henchman. Then he remembers to introduce Howard to his new colleagues, the driver Chip and the secretary Helen, and says they will be seeing each other a lot. Comment below if you remember who these people are. Howard greets them and asks what they will do next, and Liu replies, meet an intelligent and powerful woman. Well, as we can see, she indeed has great power in addition to a cute kitten. She seems to be someone really important because in her first scene, we already see her saying no to Sabrina and the other two. Liu arrives with our protagonist, and the waifu gets all excited. Sabrina says they came to talk about business cooperation. Why did he bring Howard here? Liu then replies that he forgot to inform her that Howard is now his assistant, so he introduces him to Mrs. Sharon Yang, the CEO of Far East Limited. Our protagonist extends his hand to greet her, but the woman simply ignores him. She asks the cute kitten if he is sleepy without even looking at Howard, then finally says she has little time for leisure and she doesn't want to talk about work. She can't wait to enjoy the hot spring, then turns around and leaves, leaving Howard wondering if he did something wrong. Liu tells him to chill out. She's just testing how patient they can be. Then he explains that her company, Far East Limited, has the largest e-commerce platform in the country. If they can get into their online channels, they'd be booming in no time, and it would be a success. The problem is the price she's asking for. It's too much, and she's trying to deceive them. Howard asks if they can't switch to another business partner. Why does it have to be her? Liu says they need to make it happen because Sabrina has a bet with their headquarters, and time is running out. If they don't meet this month's profit target soon, they probably won't see her again. Howard tries to understand what he meant by that. Then he remembers the dream, Sabrina telling him that she had set a goal for herself and couldn't call herself independent if she couldn't achieve it. He remembers the day he first saw her, the director of the new department. Liu approaches her and says they will try another meeting with her soon, and they can't give up on this opportunity. Sabrina asks what advantage they have. After all, this Sharon Young holds resentment against her father. This woman would be happy to see them fall. Liu thinks that only Sharon can help them promote the products nationwide in the blink of an eye, and that's the only way to meet the profit target. They have 3 days to make some progress. Otherwise, Sabrina will lose the bet with the company president. The two women who were there as extras say goodbye, and then he appears, the henchman using his bad boy skin, smoking a cigarette. He says he came to take Sabrina to Lawrence. Howard doesn't like this at all. Liu says there are still 3 days left for their bet to end, and he arrived too early. The henchman clicks his tongue and asks if they still don't know. Sabrina Luo is forced to meet Lawrence tomorrow and marry him as soon as possible to speed up the business cooperation. Sabrina is in shock. Howard realizes that this marriage of theirs is nothing more than a form of negotiation. Sabrina's father practically sold her to that old geezer in exchange for this business cooperation. Liu says it's absurd. Every father loves his daughter. Still, the henchman just says it's common knowledge that the capital chain of the Luo group will break, and it's understandable that Mr. Luo would give away his daughter. Howard understands it all. The entire Luo group is in trouble. To prove her ability, Sabrina used her performance at work as a bet. If she can't meet the target, she will be forced to marry this Lawrence, essentially sacrificing herself to save the company. Howard realizes that Sabrina is not at all interested in this Lawrence, and when Liu says they will never see her again, it's because this guy lives in a foreign country. Liu says he doesn't believe it and will call them to find out if it's true, but the henchman doesn't care, even sticking out his tongue. Sabrina says it's not necessary. They know this is the kind of thing her father does. He has always been like this. He manipulates her life, decides her fate. What he does to her is suffocating. Liu tells Howard to go back to his room and wait for his call. Sabrina needs to rest a bit. The henchman laughs. He says she shouldn't have insisted on making that bet with Mr. Luo. After all this drama, she still has to marry that old limp who can hardly stand. If she wants to have children, she'll have to ask a sperm bank for help. And finally, he says she deserves it. Howard looks directly at him, with anger growing inside him. The guy realizes this and asks what he's looking at. It's none of his business. Then the protagonist's phone starts ringing. He answers, and it's one of the e-girls. She tells Howard that someone hired a group of haters to spread hate against them, as if someone were spreading fake news in a WhatsApp group or something. They're saying they're a cult. Howard asks the woman what they can do, sue everyone, but she says they can't do that. After all, everyone knows that suing someone who insults you on the internet only makes things worse. She says she'll talk to Sandy to see if they can come up with something and will contact him later. Howard hangs up the phone and then realizes the henchman watched everything. He then asks what Howard thinks about it, tells him it's just the beginning. The main course is just waiting for him, Brother 7. He says Howard is doomed, then turns things around and leaves. A few hours pass, and we see Howard sitting by the hotel pool. He reflects on the fact that Hans, the henchman, knows who he is. What will he do in retaliation? The e-girls haven't found a solution to the hater problem yet, and Sabrina and Liu also seem unsure of what to do. He thinks about Sabrina and what will happen if she fails, so he decides that he can't wait for Mr. Liu. He needs to go talk to this Sharon. Maybe they still have a chance to turn things around. He hears footsteps approaching, then sees that strange guy arriving all suspicious. The protag asks what he's doing there, and he replies that someone paid him to kill a man, then tells Howard he's sorry. We go back to the scene from the beginning of the chapter, with Howard sinking into a pool, wondering if this is how he's going to die, until a hand emerges from outside the pool, and the last thing Howard sees before passing out is her, Sharon Young. Character created. Then Howard opens his eyes and sees her, the AI-63. She welcomes him, saying, "Welcome to the second game in the dream world." Howard says it's strange. Did he not die? How is he here? Aya says that the dead can't choose to enter the game and asks if his life is threatened in the real world. Then he remembers everything. The strange guy hired to kill him, saying he's a good man and the attack wasn't fatal. If he wants to survive, he should go to a hospital right away, leave the city, change his name, and never show up there again. Otherwise, not only he, but everyone he knows will be killed. With a cut on his throat, Howard wonders why everything has to be difficult in his life. The last memories before he passed out made it clear to him that there was no other choice. He would have to fight for his life, for everything he believes in, for those he loves. Taking one last look back, he says that since there's no other option, let's go to war. That's the protagonist I wanted to see. The artificial intelligence tells him that the Beast Invasion challenge is very difficult to overcome. He will die quickly if he doesn't take any tools with him, but Howard says he doesn't need them. He'll train like crazy in this dream to become a better fighter. There's nothing that can stop him this time. Then he steps through the portal.
The Beast Invasion Challenge has begun. The player will take on the role of a warrior who survived a war. The player will have to explore, fight, and even escape. The difficulty level is 1, and you have 180 days to survive.
Howard didn't take long to orient himself this time. A bulletproof vest and a weapon already equipped automatically. This challenge is going to be easy. As he thinks this, he feels something dripping on his helmet. When he looks up, he sees a massive green gorilla, monstrous, devouring a person's body. The animal is hundreds of times larger than a normal gorilla. Howard has never seen anything so big. The pieces of the dead body fall around him. He takes a deep breath and then bolts as fast as he can before the creature gets him too, wondering how he's going to fight against that. He enters an abandoned building. The creature sees that he's hiding and tries to break through the walls. The beast's strength is monstrous. It's about to bring the entire building down. Howard reaches for his weapon but hesitates. He recalls that he entered this dream with the goal of training for when he returns to real life. Josh Tai is a trained killer. He puts the gun back in its holster. The giant gorilla, tired of playing, roars grotesquely and charges at him. Since it can't see Howard, it intends to bring the entire building down at once. Howard grabs an iron bar and positions himself. A whole wall is launched at him. The gorilla throws its weight against our protagonist. Howard realizes he's about to be crushed. Then he manages to anchor the iron bar to the ground, using the monster's own weight against it. The bar pierces the concrete wall, hitting the giant animal's eye. It roars in pain and runs away instantly, defeated. Howard breathes heavily, but also feels relieved. He had survived. He crawls out of the destroyed building thinking that he needs to be more careful from now on. Just as he thinks this, he notices someone approaching. With no time to think, he grabs the nearest iron bar, stands up, activating his aiming skill when suddenly... It was her, Sharon Yang, but it was too late. He had already thrown the iron bar. However, somehow she throws herself backward and manages to dodge the bar. Howard asks if she's okay, thinking she might be a monster. She asks what he's doing there. He should be in a hospital. He doesn't understand. A hospital? Then she explains that he was soaked in blood when he burst into her room out of nowhere and then fell into the pool. She called an ambulance and saw him being taken away by them. Then Howard understands what happened. After he got injured, he must have run in search of help. He probably entered her room by mistake. In the real world, he must be sleeping in some hospital bed now. Howard tells her that when he woke up, he was in these strange ruins and asks how she ended up there, thinking to himself that he didn't choose to start the game or ask for a copy this time. The woman says she also woke up in this place out of nowhere, heard a noise, and went to see what was happening. Howard mutters to himself, something is wrong with this game. Anyway, he thanks the woman for calling the ambulance. If it weren't for her, he would be dead. She tells him to save the kind words for later when they find a way to survive. She mentions that, as he can see, he's good at throwing things, so he might be useful in helping her. He asks, help with what? Then she points to a city in the distance that looks somewhat submerged and asks if he doesn't find it familiar. The protagonist looks closely and then realizes it's their company's building. She explains that based on the terrain and the weather conditions of the nearby buildings, this is probably what the Earth looks like 300 to 400 years in the future. In other words, they just experienced a time travel. The wind smells bad and the water is likely caustic. Sea levels continue to rise, and perhaps in the end, the Earth will be flooded. Howard realizes that this is how the world's decline will happen. Sharon says the good news is they're not the only living humans. She can probably find a suitable habitat if they have some time. The bad news is that there are many monsters, like that giant gorilla. Then she asks if he wants to work with her. She can lead the way, and he can protect them both. But Howard first mentions that she just said they time traveled, and she doesn't seem bothered by it at all. She's even making plans. How can she not be scared? The woman responds responds that she just wants to survive. They continue their way through what seems to be a desert. She asks Howard if he was some kind of dart-throwing athlete or something, and he says no, throwing darts was just a hobby. Then he tells the woman that he didn't expect her to remember his name. After all, when they greeted each other, she didn't even look at him. The woman says that at that moment, he didn't mean much to her. It was a waste of time to talk to him. Howard says that's harsh and warns her that if she sizes up people around her that way, she'll never have any friends again. The woman doesn't say anything because they seemingly arrived at the place she pointed out. He says she's good. It looks like a fortress. Then she responds, saying that you only have friends after you value yourself enough, and asks if he doesn't think so. However, Howard suddenly covers the woman's mouth and pulls her behind some rocks. A creature that looks like a giant centipede passes right above their heads. Howard pulls out his weapon, tells her that this fortress might be a disappointment, hands her the gun, and tells her to use it to protect herself. She thanks him and says she'll help him if he needs it. Howard looks again at the fortress. No monsters in sight. They were about to enter. As they walk inside the fortress, Sharon finds it strange that the building and the ground are clean, as if someone cleans this place every day. But why haven't they seen any human beings? Then they stop on what looks like a military post. Pieces of trees formed something that looked like an eagle's nest, but an eagle's nest cannot be that big. And at that moment, they see the creature, a bizarre mutant eagle. The eagle flies over the place, but seems to be heading straight for them. Sharon tells them to hide quickly, but Howard doesn't move. He stares at the creature and then tells her to hide because he's fine. The woman asks if he's gone mad. His steel spears won't kill that creature. Howard says that's exactly what he wants. He remembers the moment when Josh Ty put a knife to his throat and said that even in that situation, he could do nothing but tremble in fear. He said it was ridiculous for Howard to talk about changing his own fate. Anyone could kill him effortlessly. Howard tells himself that when the dream ends, if he can only remember one thing, let it be how fearless and brave he managed to be. So, he takes his position, ready to throw his steel spears. The monstrous eagle screamed as our protagonist threw as many spears as he could. In frenzied movements, he launched one after another without stopping. The spears hit the creature, some pierced its wings, others went through its body. Sharon couldn't believe it when she saw the enormous bird fall from the sky, lifeless. The green blood of the creature splashed on Howard, and immediately, he felt a burning sensation, as if it were acid. He fell to his knees, trying to rid himself of the burns. Sharon ran to him, but there was nothing she could do. Howard screamed in pain. That liquid was corroding his skin. Suddenly, gears started to move, and the gate of the fort opened. A rowboat emerged from inside.
A wounded human has been detected. Emergency medical system activated. Clean, roll, clean.
From its only remaining arm, the robot took out a syringe. Sharon asked who it was, but the robot, without responding, plunged the needle into our protagonist's back and injected its contents. Howard felt an overwhelming dizziness.
Running low on electrical power. The system will soon shut down.
Then he collapsed on the ground. A little later, he woke up inside what seemed to be a military base. Sharon said he looked fine, except for his hair, which seemed to have gone wild, probably a side effect of the injection. Howard thought he had been injured by the corrosive liquid and asked where they were. Sharon said they were inside the fortress. When he was in danger, that robot injected something into him, and the wounds simply healed miraculously. Maybe when he woke up, he could tell them the story of this place. At that moment, a red light illuminated the robot's head.
Fully charged. A large, dirty area has been spotted. Clean, roll, clean, roll, clean, roll.
Then the robot went outside the fort, lifted what looked like its head, and released a flamethrower on the monster's corpse. Howard was puzzled, but Sharon said it was made with advanced technology, and perhaps it needed some kind of code to activate it. She remembered the number written in front of the robot, 2003, so she called it.
Robot 2003 for domestic tasks has received a new request. The autopilot mode ends, and the intelligent program mode will be initiated for use. The autopilot mode has been on for 1,130 days. It received 363 attacks from different creatures, cleaned 45,000 tons of garbage, suffered 672 damage. On the verge of deactivation. Maintenance needed to.
A blue light started to shine intensely from the robot, and Howard and Sharon couldn't comprehend what was happening.
Hey, I knew this day would come. I didn't work hard enough. That's why humans left me behind. As long as I clean the fort every day, humans will finally return.
Sharon asks if he means there are no humans there, and this place is only tidy because he cleans every day?
That's right. Humans will return one day when they know how clean this place is. is, just like it used to be.
Sharon is thoughtful, and Howard tries to understand what's going on in her mind. Then she asks the robot if it knows where the humans went. Did they leave any message when they left?
They said that if they couldn't fly within a year, it meant they had probably gone to Paradise. Is Paradise a nice place, isn't it? I thought about going to them, but I couldn't find Paradise on the map. Could you tell me where Paradise is?
Howard tells the robot that it's better if it doesn't know. Then he tells Sharon that because this robot has been on autopilot for 3 years, the people there were probably already dead. Sharon tells the robot to take them to the storage room. It was time to make new plans. Then she turns and walks away, leaving Howard thinking about the fact that even after going through so many problems, she's still so calm that she can think about making new plans. In a strange way, Sharon Yang's emotions are truly stable.
Here are the human weapons, but there is no ammunition. These compressed energy bars are the only food left. Humans said they were as tough as jerky and could last for 100 years. Humans used this chemical composition to heal wounds. They called it Medusa's tears. If used excessively, rust will grow on the body.
Howard asks if that's what the robot injected into him and if he's going to turn into stone. The robot responds that the potion's effect is strong, but he is safe. Then a pair of scissors comes out of it, and as it cuts Howard's hair, it says,
"This potion cannot completely fix the nervous system. Some humans fought too hard and relied too much on the potion, so they ended up in a vegetative state."
Howard thinks it's a pity because he was already thinking that this potion would help him become a master in martial arts.
Besides this storage, the field also has an underground reservoir and an energy center that constantly supplies electricity.
Upon hearing this, Howard immediately asks if the place has bathrooms because he smells really bad.
Heading to the bathroom.
Sharon asks the robot if there is an energy center, why it didn't recharge, and the robot responds that it is just a task robot. Without permission, it cannot use human resources. Then Sharon says that a machine will all language this is. It looks like scribbles. The robot appears, saying that it brought the map for her, but at that moment, the robot's axis breaks and it crashes to the ground. The woman doesn't seem to care at all and just asks if he can still translate what is written on the monitor. The robot says it's fine and that this is a new language that humans invented to record the rise and fall of civilization. To ensure all intelligent beings understand the meaning, they used scribbles to narrate the stories. However, the language had not been recorded in him, so he cannot read the records. Sharon finds it considerate of them to consider how to deal with the situation even after the death of their civilization. However, when she opened the map, she didn't like what she saw. They were on an isolated island. To be exact, this is the only island on Earth. As the statistics show, in 179 days, this land will also be flooded by the acid ocean. Now all the mutant beasts on the planet have gathered in this place.
To stay safe, Master, please stay in the shelter.
Sharon begins to analyze their current situation. They have no food or ammunition. Fierce beasts are everywhere, and there is no one to rescue them. In other words, there is nothing they can do but wait until death reaches them. She seems to have accepted the situation. While tying her hair, Sharon asks the robot if humans left clothes there. She wants to give some to Howard. The robot says yes. The clothes are in the rooms, and she doesn't need to worry. He will take care of it himself. The woman looks closely at the robot and asks if he knows why humans abandoned him. He asks if it's because he didn't work hard enough. She walks over his body and then says no. It's because he didn't know how to show them how valuable he is, and she doesn't want to end up like him. Some time passes, and we see someone opening the bathroom door. Our protagonist was taking a shower when he turns around and sees the robot lying on the floor. Immediately, he asks what happened to him.
Please don't leave me behind. I can still work. I can clean. I want to be with the humans. I miss the time I spent with the humans.
Then we see what would be the robot's memories. From a time when humanity still survived, animals still existed, children played and called for him. He was useful to them, until suddenly he wasn't anymore. And since then, he has been alone in this place, completely abandoned.
I beg you, I can still work. I don't know what paradise is like, but I will do my best to make this place cleaner than paradise.
Damn, someone give a hug to this robot. Howard puts back what would be an eye in place and says that the parts are worn out. He asks how robots are repaired, and 2003 says that in the maintenance room, there were human engineers who repaired the robots. Howard says there are no engineers, so he'll have to try it himself. But at that moment, the door behind him opens, and Sharon enters the bathroom in a robe. She says the world is about to be destroyed. He doesn't need to be so shy, and there are some clean clothes she set aside for him. He thanks her all shyly and tells her to put them on the table. She does that, and then tells him that they are in a very bad situation, but they still have a chance to survive. What she doesn't understand is why humans left this shelter that had food and a roof to risk being killed. Howard responds that 2003 talked about a place they were looking for, but she says it doesn't matter. The whole world is going to collapse soon. No matter where they try to go, they can't stop the world from collapsing unless the place they were looking for can protect them from the great destruction. Only such a place would be worth it, even if it meant they could die on the way. She removes her robe while continuing to talk that the records must contain useful information, and with some time, she will be able to decipher it. The problem is that the sea level was rising more and more. Monsters on land will continue to gather, which will put them in increasing danger. As she enters the bathtub, she continues, saying that she hopes they can continue working as a team until they get help. She will research ways to escape while he keeps them safe, but Howard is barely listening. He is completely intimidated by the fact that the woman undressed in front of him out of nowhere and wonders if she is not afraid that he will attack her. He agrees with what she said and glances sideways, then realizes that under the robe there was a weapon. Howard wonders what that means. Sharon says she thought she might have to resort to some special methods to calm him, but now she is more relieved to see that he is a person who can control himself. In this critical life or death moment, a mental breakdown would destroy all their chances of survival. Yeah, guys, this woman is completely different from Sabrina. She planned to use this weapon to calm him down in case he lost control. At no point did she fear any kind of sexual attack. Her only fear was losing him, her little helper, as he might have some mental collapse. This woman sees the bigger picture. She is much smarter than the average person. Howard tells her that he has something to do, then takes 2003 and leaves the bathroom. Sharon stays there thinking about how Howard is just an ordinary person. The world is falling apart, but he is still bound by morality. But that's good because she won't have to spend much time dealing with him. Some time passes, and we hear the sound of welding. Howard was fixing 2003, who was already chattering again. Our protagonist asks the robot why he didn't say a word when Sharon was with them. He thought it was so broken that it couldn't say anything anymore.
The human language is rich in meaning. I cannot distinguish the nuances behind the words.
Howard agrees and says that Sharon Yang can do whatever she wants as long as she doesn't interrupt his training to kill the beasts. The robot is amazed when he says this and says it's dangerous, but Howard says he has no other choice and explains to him that in another world, he was also living in a time of destruction. The mutant animals there almost took his life, and the killing wouldn't stop unless the waves of fall disappear. He says that maybe the robot doesn't understand this, but he can't imagine how much courage it takes for a hard-working and indebted worker to force himself out of his comfort zone and try to break down his barriers. He traded everything he had for an achievement that in the end was crushed by someone else without any effort. Howard clearly understands that for him, the true death is surrendering and running away. He needs to be able to move forward.
Another world? Do you mean the paradise where humans went?
Howard asks why he always talks about these paradise things and says that for him, his home is his paradise. It's a place where there is safety, loyalty, value, light, and the power of omnipotent healing. If he can overcome this challenge, he can save his home.
I understand. Paradise is amazing. No wonder all humans. Is there anything I can help you with, Master? I would love to help you save your paradise.
Howard says, of course, yes. He will definitely get hurt fighting the monsters, and he will need him to heal quickly. Besides, he doesn't need to keep calling him Master all the time. He can call him Howard, and that's fine. The robot finds this amazing because only humans call each other by name. Howard tells him that if he were a robot girl, it might be nice for him to keep calling him Master, but a rusty machine doesn't interest him. The second day of the apocalypse arrives. Sharon observes the work Howard did with the robot. And my friend, check out this armored robot. It looks like a mech. It even has a little shield. I want to see who will mess with him now. Sharon shows our protagonist large crossbow bolts that the people there used to defend themselves against attacking monsters, and he takes them for himself. Then he starts heading out of the fort because, after all, his goal there was to hunt beasts and get stronger, right? But the woman tells him to wait. He says they made an agreement about each one's role, so he was going out to kill the monsters. She says that it's unnecessary. There's no reason for him to go out hunting the creatures. His current role is to keep the fort safe. Howard says they only have 180 days. He doesn't want to wait until the monsters come to them all at once. She doesn't understand why he's looking for trouble. She acknowledges that he has skills to kill animals, but now they are dealing with more serious problems. Has he forgotten how corrosive the blood of these creatures can be? She saw a monkey over 2 stories tall. He's risking his life unnecessarily. They can't make any mistakes. When she finds the place where the humans went, they can fight to get there. But for now, it's better if they conserve their strength and accumulate more power. Howard simply asks if she's really trying to tell him what to do and what not to do in his own world. The woman doesn't understand what he meant. Howard thinks about the fact that in real life, he's almost dead in bed. A bunch of people are trying to kill them. Thinking about these things, how could he stay in the shelter and not go out? He has to get stronger as soon as possible. Then he tells the woman that he agreed to take care of her just because she once saved his life. But this agreement doesn't mean she can interfere with his work. Truth be told, he doesn't care about how this world will end. If she feels uncomfortable, she can simply leave at any time. Sharon, after taking this harsh rebuke, maintains her composure and says that she was just concerned about his safety and wishes him a safe journey. Howard calls 2003 and leaves, thinking that all the things he said to her in the end are meaningless because she's just an NPC. But the woman goes into turmoil because she realizes that she was completely wrong about him. Howard isn't thinking or behaving like any mediocre man. Even with the world sinking, she can't understand what's going on in his mind. At that moment, a snake passes between her legs. Sharon turns around, and suddenly, she's in a forest. Sharon, what value do you have? What value do you have? A hand grabs her shoulder. She turns around immediately, but there's no one there. Sharon, 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 Sharon. She screams for these voices in her head to go away. Join us, join us, join us, join us. She ties up her hair, and then the hallucination ends. Another psychotic episode. Why would this happen again? There's no need to hurry. She still has time, but she needs to develop a friendly relationship with Howard. Otherwise, she'll probably die. The story continues, and we see the robot telling Howard that his tone while talking to the woman now was different from yesterday's. Howard tells him that his attitude changed when he first went there, and that if he had been tougher in the past, he wouldn't have let other people hold a knife to his throat.
For humans, the neck is one of the most important parts. Why did you do something so dangerous?
Howard tells him that after the first dream, he mistakenly started to think that all people were good. Then he remembers a woman who had come to him in real life looking for someone, and the person she was looking for was Josh Tai. But Howard informs her that he had left the night before. The woman tells him that Josh Tai killed someone because he wanted to save her life. He's not a bad guy. He spent 20 years in prison for that, but now that he was out, he was already getting involved with the wrong people again. She asks Howard if he sees him again, to try to convince him to leave this life behind. Howard tells the robot that it doesn't matter if he's in a dream or in real life. He shouldn't fantasize anymore about human nature or saving lives. Then we see the moment when he has a knife to his throat. Josh Tai asks if he really wants to help him. He thinks he's who, God? He tells Howard to give him a reason to work with him after all. He wasn't rich, nor powerful. He had nothing to offer him. Howard tells Robot 2003 that saving lives is the job of a hero. He had to stop fantasizing. Most people are not heroes. They can barely follow the rules of being a decent person. The robot, who had been listening, says,
Once again, it's human language that I cannot understand.
Then the two finally find what they had gone looking for. Beasts. Mutant wolves. 2003 says these wolves are very fierce. Howard tells him not to worry. That's all he wanted. Now it was time to work.
Howard, be careful. They have higher fight scores than you.
Howard says nothing, just pulls out his spear, and his heart races. We see him with his skin from the first season. The robot says the score is increasing. Our protag is going chest to chest against the mutant wolves, which come at him with everything they've got. But they are quickly struck by Howard's spears. 2003 just watches the fight from afar. Howard steps on the head of one of the wolves while another comes at him. The mutant wolf salivates, but Howard manages to grab it by the neck. The animal...
Nice. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the likes and subscribers, new subscribers. To call it a night. I am heading out. Guys, stay healthy, stay safe wherever you are in the world. Peace. I shall stream. Obviously, tomorrow already here, so later on. So now.